Chapter 1821 Entering the Immortal Monastery, 3. Chapter 1821 Entering the Immortal Monastery, 3. A beast tamer, huh? Indeed, I can sense several presences within you, the ancient immortal responded shortly after. You were with the Immortal Monastery's sect leader. What is your connection with the Immortal Monastery and the sect leader? Instead of giving a response, the ancient immortal questioned Yuan. Hearing this, Yuan decided to answer truthfully with some minor lies mixed within. I helped the sect leader escape the Shadow Realm, a place where souls are damned to wander for eternity. In exchange for helping him, sect leader Ji agreed to make me his disciple and the successor of the Immortal Monastery. The Shadow Realm. The spectators present gasped in shock after hearing about this ominous place. He actually released someone from the Shadow Realm? Does he not fear offending the heavens, the Celestial Emperor? Why would it offend the Celestial Emperor? It's not as if our current Celestial Emperor was responsible for what happened during the heavenly war of immortals or gods. No, but if the Celestial Emperor wanted to, he could easily free those in the Shadow Realm at any point. The fact he hasn't means he doesn't want them to leave for whatever reason. There were two main reasons why nobody dared to assist those within the Shadow Realm. First, the place was incredibly dangerous. The majority of the souls dwelling there had long lost their rationality, their souls corrupted over time. They were no different from malevolent spirits, driven by pure instinct and malice, making it perilous for anyone to venture near them. The second reason was that nobody wanted to offend the Celestial Emperor. Just like a certain individual had mentioned, the Celestial Emperor had the power and authority to release the souls within the Shadow Realm, but he hasn't for whatever reason. So you saved the sect leader. Very well, I shall make this a special occasion and allow you to enter with those residing within you despite having only a single token. However, they will not be able to participate in the trial, nor will you be able to contact them until you are finished with the trial, the Ancient Immortal finally said. Yuan bowed to the Ancient Immortal. Thank you, Senior. Since you are now part of the Immortal Monastery, you should address me as Founder. Yes, Founder. Now get going. You have less than 10 seconds to enter. Yes, Founder. Now get going. You have less than 10 seconds to enter. Yuan nodded and entered the portal with just 2 seconds left. As Yuan stepped through the immortal gates, his vision momentarily blanked, and an unsettling sensation washed over him. It didn't take long for him to notice a profound change within his body, and it was not a good one. His strength faded away, his talents sealed, and most disturbingly, his cultivation had completely vanished. At this moment, Yuan realized he was no different from a mortal, stripped of all the power and talents he had. When Yuan's vision returned, he found himself standing in a serene courtyard nestled in the heart of a bamboo forest. The gentle rustling of the bamboo leaves in the wind contrasted starkly with the unsettling changes he had just experienced. Around him were the other participants, all with tokens numbered 7,001 to 8,000. They stood scattered throughout the courtyard, their expressions varying between confusion, wariness, and curiosity as they took in their surroundings. Where the hell are we? This doesn't look like the Immortal Monastery. Someone exclaimed. Fuck. My entire cultivation is gone. I also cannot sense my physique or talents. What's happening? Did we get tricked? The participants began to panic as they realized their powers had completely vanished, leaving them as vulnerable as mortals. Murmurs of confusion and fear spread through the group, their voices rising as they struggled to understand the puzzling situation. While the others were consumed by their panic, Yuan stood quietly, his expression calm. His gaze wandered over the courtyard and bamboo forest with a nostalgic glint. This place is the bamboo garden, Yuan thought to himself. The very first trial where one must prove their worth before being allowed to even step foot into the Immortal Monastery as a disciple. Tian Yang's memories inside this place began to resurface again, but he didn't have the time to reminisce. Yuan began inspecting his body. Sure enough, he was no different than a mortal. As for his connection with Feng Yuxiang and the others, he couldn't even sense them, almost as if his connection to them was completely cut off. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man wearing the Immortal Monastery's uniform appeared before the group and spoke in a commanding and authoritative tone. Shut up and listen up, you greenhorns. My surname is Zhou, and you will all address me as Senior Zhou for as long as you are here. You are currently in the bamboo garden, where you take your first steps to become a proud disciple of the Immortal Monastery. In order to be acknowledged as a disciple of the Immortal Monastery, you must first prove that you have the talents to become a cultivator. You will be given a cultivation technique after this introduction, and only when you comprehend the cultivation technique and become a cultivator are you allowed to become a disciple of the Immortal Monastery. The time limit is 4 years. If you fail to become a cultivator by then, you will be executed, so you'd best study like your life depends on it. I will now give you some time to digest everything before we continue. I am also not accepting any questions at this moment. The courtyard was eerily silent for the first several moments, with everyone trying to comprehend their situation. So this is what the ancient immortal meant by experiencing the Immortal Monastery in its earliest days? Someone eventually spoke out loud. I was told the theme of the hidden domain would be roleplay. I guess this is what they meant. The trial seems a bit too easy, someone suddenly remarked. Although they have taken away our cultivation, we are still experts. It won't take more than a few days to pass this trial. Hearing this, many people nodded, agreeing with this individual. After all, even if they lost all of their cultivation, their memories and experience as cultivators remained. With this in mind, having 4 years to become a cultivator again seemed overly generous, not that anyone minded. Chapter 1822 Bamboo Garden. Chapter 1822 Bamboo Garden. Alright, enough chattering. Follow me. I will show you around the bamboo forest first, said Senior Zhou a few moments later. The group began following Senior Zhou around the bamboo garden. They started from the nearest facility, the cafeteria. This is your dining area. It will only be open 2 times a day for breakfast and dinner. In addition to studying your cultivation technique, everyone here will have a weekly quota to fill, and if you fail to meet your quota, you will be punished. What sort of quota? Someone asked. What do you think? Senior Zhou replied with a faint smirk. You're no different from servants in your current position, so you'll naturally do what servants do, from chopping and collecting bamboo to gathering water. That's the quota you'll be fulfilling. Although it sounded tedious and pointless, nobody there really paid any mind to the quota, since they were confident they would earn the qualification to leave his bamboo garden very soon, with many of them aiming to become a cultivator in less than a day. The next area Senior Zhou brought them was the bamboo stream, where the servants go to wash their clothes. You'll be washing your clothes here, Senior Zhou continued, his tone nonchalant. If you're still hungry even after visiting the cafeteria, you can catch your own food a little further upstream, where fish are available. The participants stared at him, utterly dumbfounded. The thought of washing their own clothes was unthinkable. Most of them had servants who handled such mundane tasks, and others simply bought new clothes, discarding the old ones whenever they got dirty. As cultivators, none of them could imagine stooping to such laborious tasks. However, once again they quickly reassured themselves, believing they would regain their cultivation within a day. With this confidence, they dismissed the need to concern themselves with such menial tasks. Right next to the bamboo stream stood the training hall, a modest structure where the servants would go to train their bodies. However, the training conducted here was far from the rigorous cultivation regimens the participants were accustomed to. Instead, it consisted of basic exercises designed for mortals, intended solely to strengthen the body without the aid of spiritual energy or cultivation techniques. To the participants, this hall seemed almost laughable, a stark contrast to the grand training grounds they were used to as cultivators. The training hall is open all day. Cultivation is not all about spiritual energy. You also need to strengthen your body, the foundation. Senior Zhou spoke with a profound expression on his face. A few minutes later, they arrived at a spacious area filled with neatly stacked piles of bamboo. The scent of freshly cut wood lingered in the air, mingling with the rustle of leaves from the surrounding forest. This is where you'll hand over your quota, Senior Zhou said, gesturing to the piles. Once you've fulfilled your quota, head to that building over there for confirmation. He pointed to a modest structure nearby, its simple design blending seamlessly with the surroundings. Senior Zhou continued the tour of the bamboo garden, a process that stretched nearly the entire day. By the time they finished, the sun was already dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows over the bamboo garden. At the very end, he brought the group to their living quarters and said, "The men's living quarters are to the right, and the women's living quarters are to the left. Although you'll be working and training with each other, you are strictly prohibited from entering each other's living quarters. This will conclude the tour. Once I dismiss you, go ahead and pick your living quarters. They're all the same, so don't waste time looking for the best or most spacious one. Once you've chosen, write your name on the door and take your keys. As for your cultivation technique, you'll find it inside your living quarter. You are only given one for free, so try not to lose it." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the group to ensure they were paying attention. "Tomorrow at sunrise, everyone will gather here. If you fail to show up, you will be considered to have deserted, which is punishable by death. If you have any questions, save them for tomorrow." With that, he gestured for the group to disperse before turning around and quickly disappearing from the place. While most people left to secure their living quarters, some stayed behind to chat with each other. "Yua, young master." A familiar voice called out to Yuan, who stayed behind. Yuan turned around to see a beautiful young lady approaching him. "Ying," he smiled after seeing her pretty face. "Let's go somewhere more private." He pointed at an empty area in the distance. Lan Ying nodded and followed him. Once alone, Yuan asked, "How are you feeling?" "Very weird. With my cultivation and powers gone, it doesn't feel like I am in my own body," she said. "Can you transform?" Yuan asked. "No," she shook her head. "I also cannot feel our connection despite being beside each other. It's almost as if our connection no longer exists. I also cannot feel Feng Feng or the others' presence despite entering the Immortal Monastery with them. I have a feeling these bodies were created solely for the trial, and our real bodies are elsewhere," Yuan explained as he looked at his palm. "What should we do now?" Lan Ying asked after digesting the situation. "The goal of this trial is still unclear, but if we take the ancient immortal's words at face value, we should just follow the flow and act like we're really servants trying to join the Immortal Monastery. So learn the cultivation technique and become a cultivator?" Yuan nodded. "About that, will I even be able to cultivate a cultivation technique meant for humans properly?" Lan Ying wore an uncertain expression on her face. "I'm sure it'll work out. I doubt the ancient immortal would have allowed you and the other beasts to enter if it was impossible for you to progress," Yuan reassured her. "If you say so," Lan Ying nodded, no longer feeling worried. Chapter 1823 Bamboo Garden 2. Chapter 1823 Bamboo Garden 2. "Then I'll see you tomorrow," Lan Ying said with a light smile before heading toward the women's living quarters. Yuan nodded briefly and didn't linger either. He made his way to the men's side, his steps deliberate as he passed by every living quarter, including numerous empty ones. He continued without pause until he reached Building 423, the same building Tian had lived in for 3 years before becoming an official disciple of the Immortal Monastery. Standing before the door, he took a moment to glance at the familiar structure, memories stirring within him. Coincidentally, Building 423 was still unoccupied, so Yuan decided to claim it. He quickly wrote his name on the door as instructed and acquired its keys before stepping inside. The interior was small and unadorned, consisting of only a single bed with no other furniture. The plain walls and sparse space gave the room a minimalist feel, yet it served its purpose as a resting place. After a brief glance around the sparse interior, Yuan's eyes landed on the manual resting neatly on the bed. The manual's cover was worn and simple, with no ornate designs or embellishments, yet it exuded an air of subtle importance. A slight smile appeared on his face after picking it up and reading the title. "As I thought, it's the basic qi gathering technique," he mumbled. He wasted no time and immediately began reading through its contents. Sure enough, the cultivation technique was exactly the same as he remembered. Since the cultivation technique is the same, there's no reason why I shouldn't start cultivating now. Moreover, there's something I want to confirm. Yuan placed the cultivation technique back on the bed and sat down cross-legged, settling into the lotus position. Closing his eyes, he began reciting the contents of the manual in his mind. Since he had already cultivated and mastered the basic qi gathering technique in the past, it required almost no effort, and everything felt as natural as breathing. His breathing perfectly synced with the rhythm of the technique, and he effortlessly entered a trance-like state. Within moments, the spiritual energy around Yuan began converging toward his body, entering through his pores and gathering inside his dantian. However, he quickly noticed a problem. While the spiritual energy was gathering as expected, the speed was unbearably slow. What's more, his capacity to contain the energy seemed drastically limited, and he could only retain a minuscule amount of the spiritual energy he managed to draw in. Compared to his usual cultivation speed, his current progress was abysmally slow, worse than trash, bordering on crippled. This confirmed his theory that the body he was using wasn't his real one but a temporary construct specifically designed for the trial. Its severe limitations were likely a deliberate part of the challenge, forcing participants to cultivate from the ground up under the harshest conditions imaginable. Despite this realization, Yuan remained calm and continued to cultivate as normal. Meanwhile, the other participants were still struggling with the first step, memorizing the cultivation technique. Unlike Yuan, who had already memorized the cultivation technique before entering the hidden domain, they were encountering an entirely different issue. Despite their experience and powerful memorization as cultivators, they found it unnaturally difficult to retain the contents of the technique. The words seemed to slip from their minds as soon as they read them, and the more they tried to focus, the harder it became to comprehend. What the fuck is going on? This cultivation technique should only be a mortal rank technique, earth rank at best. Why am I having trouble memorizing it when I can memorize and comprehend divine rank techniques with ease? This must be the hidden domain's doing. I knew the trial seemed too easy at a glance. Fuck. As time went on, more and more participants began to grasp the reality of their situation, that this trial was far more complex than it initially seemed. Many found themselves growing frustrated and even embarrassed as they struggled to memorize a mere mortal rank cultivation technique, something they would typically consider beneath them. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and the night gave way to dawn. Despite spending the entire night trying, not a single one of the 1,000 participants in the bamboo garden had managed to become a cultivator. Out of the entire group, only Yuan comprehended the cultivation technique well enough to even begin the process of cultivation. The participants, many of whom had initially dismissed the trial as overly simple, now found themselves humbled and increasingly frustrated. The harsh reality of the challenge was beginning to set in, and the atmosphere within the bamboo forest grew heavier. As the first light of sunrise illuminated the bamboo garden, the participants gathered at the appointed area. The atmosphere was tense, with many looking weary and frustrated from the night's struggles. Senior Zhou stood waiting for them, his posture relaxed but his sharp gaze sweeping over the group, taking note of their expressions and demeanor. He smiled and let out a chuckle, his tone laced with amusement. Judging by your expressions, it's clear you're all struggling with the cultivation technique. Did you think becoming a cultivator would be easy? What a naive and foolish notion. Don't worry, you have plenty of time, 4 years to be exact. In any case, Senior Zhou continued in a serious tone, it's time to begin your quotas. Since you're all new, we'll start small. Consider it an adjustment period. As you spend more time in this place, your quotas will increase, so it would be in your best interest to leave this place as soon as possible. For this week, everyone will be required to chop down 20 bamboo stalks and fill 2 water pots. You'll find the tools you need at the tool shed near the training hall. He glanced over the group before continuing, how you fulfill your quota is entirely up to you. You can spread it out over the course of the week or complete everything in a single day. The only thing that matters is that your quota is fulfilled by the end of the week. Those who fail to fulfill their quotas will be punished. I won't go into the details, but if you wish to know, you can find out by missing your quota. Chapter 1824 Bamboo Garden 3. Chapter 1824 Bamboo Garden 3. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask, Senior Zhou said as his gaze swept the crowd before him. Nothing? Good, then you can start your new life in the bamboo garden. If you have any problems, you know where to find me. Senior Zhou turned around and walked away. Afterward, most of the participants decided to return home to continue studying the cultivation technique. Yuan glanced around until his eyes landed on Lan Yingying. With a subtle tilt of his head, he gestured for her to follow him. Lan Yingying caught the signal and gave a small nod in acknowledgement before quietly following him. Together, they made their way to the same secluded spot they had used the previous day. How was your cultivation? Yuan asked her. She shook her head. I couldn't even begin. I am having trouble memorizing the technique. Trouble memorizing the technique? Yuan asked, raising his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. Since he had already memorized the cultivation technique prior to entering the hidden domain, he hadn't experienced the same struggles as the others. As a result, he was unaware of the unusual difficulty they were encountering. Although the cultivation technique is very basic at a glance and should be easy to master, I am unable to memorize it. It's almost as if something is interfering with my ability, Lan Yingying explained. Yuan then muttered, if you think about it, this trial would have been too easy if there were no restrictions, since there were many powerful cultivators who entered the hidden domain. What about you? I'm guessing you've already memorized the technique? Yuan nodded. To be more precise, I already knew the cultivation technique even before we arrived at this place. I used to be a disciple of the Immortal Monastery after all. Lan Yingying then asked, have you tried cultivating with your own cultivation technique? Yuan shook his head and said, no, I didn't even bother trying. However, judging by the atmosphere earlier, I'm willing to bet that the others have tried it and failed. Yuan's guess had been spot on. When the other participants failed to memorize the basic qi gathering technique, most attempted to bypass the issue by using their own cultivation techniques. However, they quickly discovered that while they could activate their techniques and go through the motions of cultivation, they were completely unable to absorb any spiritual energy. It was as if the spiritual energy in this world had been attuned exclusively to the basic qi gathering technique, rendering all other methods ineffective. Anyway, while I have begun cultivating, my progress is astonishingly slow. At this rate, it'll take a whole year before I gather enough spiritual energy to break through to Spirit Apprentice. Lan Yingying's eyes widened at his words. A whole year. Yes, he confirmed. I also have a feeling that all of our bodies were created equal, so we'll progress at the same rate. Lan Yingying swallowed nervously. She couldn't fathom spending a whole year just reaching Spirit Apprentice, not including the time it'll take her to memorize the cultivation technique. I'm sure there will be ways for us to increase our talents or cultivation speed. Until I find something, let's just keep doing our best with what we're given. Okay, Lan Yingying nodded. I'm going to train my body through the quotas now. A trained body will absorb spiritual energy much easier than one that has never been trained before, Yuan said a moment later. I'll focus on the cultivation technique for now, Lan Yingying said. They went their separate ways shortly after. Lan Yingying returned to her living quarters to focus on studying the cultivation technique, while Yuan headed to the training hall to acquire some tools. At the training hall, Yuan selected a sturdy sword, noting its weight before heading into the bamboo forest to begin his quota. The bamboo in the bamboo garden was far from ordinary. Each stalk was thicker than an adult human and significantly more durable than regular bamboo. If someone attempted to chop these bamboo stalks down with a knife, it would take an entire day just to chop a single stalk, hence why Yuan went straight for the sword. As Yuan stood before a towering bamboo stalk, he couldn't help but reminisce about the first time Tian had tried to chop one of these stalks down. I was completely unaware of their durability back then, he muttered with a chuckle, the memory vivid in his mind. I nearly broke my wrist swinging an axe at one of these darn bamboos. The thought brought a small smile to his face as he gripped the sword in his hand, preparing to take his first swing. Yuan swung with all his might, the blade of the sword striking the bamboo with precision. However, the towering stalk didn't even quiver from the impact. When Yuan examined the result, he saw only a small, barely noticeable cut in the bamboo's thick surface. Meanwhile, Yuan's hands stung from the impact, and a faint ache spread through the bones in his arms. He flexed his fingers briefly to shake off the discomfort, muttering to himself, "It's tougher than I remembered." At this rate, he'd need to strike the bamboo over 100 times before cutting it down. After taking a deep breath to steady himself, Yuan went for another strike, and then another. Each swing sent stinging vibrations through his hands and arms, but he ignored the pain and persevered until he conquered the bamboo. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of effort, the sword managed to cut through the bamboo, and the towering stalk fell with a heavy crash. By the time he finished chopping his first bamboo, Yuan's arms felt like lead. The exhaustion and pain made it nearly impossible for him to lift them. With a heavy sigh, he let the sword slip from his grasp and collapsed onto his buttocks, leaning back slightly as he tried to catch his breath. His body was drenched in sweat, the sticky heat clinging to him as he sat there, staring up at the clear blue sky. Chapter 1825 Bamboo Garden 4 Chapter 1825 Bamboo Garden 4 After chopping down his first bamboo, Yuan had to sit still for several minutes before he even thought about moving again. I haven't felt this weak in a while. He sighed as he turned to look at the bamboo head just chopped. A moment later, Yuan reached for his sword again despite the lingering ache in his arms. With a swift motion he chopped off a tiny piece of the bamboo. Then without hesitation Yuan tossed the piece of bamboo into his mouth and closed it, letting it rest on his tongue without chewing. As I thought, there is spiritual energy in this bamboo, Yuan mused to himself as he settled into the lotus posture. He began cultivating on the spot, absorbing what little spiritual energy was in the bamboo. Although he couldn't sense spiritual energy in his current state, he knew the bamboo garden was growing spiritual bamboo, a common ingredient used in alchemy during the primordial era. While the spiritual energy they contained was minuscule and would barely speed up his cultivation, he wasn't in the position to be picky. Moreover, it helped him recover his fatigue much faster, allowing him to work toward his next bamboo. Once Yuan had recovered enough energy, he picked up and dragged the first bamboo he chopped, which weighed around 15 kilograms, to the designated area where quotas were gathered and verified. After delivering the first bamboo and having it verified, Yuan returned to the bamboo garden to continue his work. Each bamboo took about an hour of effort, including the time he needed to recover in between. The repetitive process was grueling, but he persevered, chopping down 4 more bamboo stalks over the next several hours. I shouldn't have skipped breakfast. Yuan sighed, his stomach growling loudly. Although he had been absorbing spiritual energy, the majority of it was being utilized to advance his cultivation, leaving nothing to satisfy his hunger. Unfortunately, the cafeteria only operates at set times, once for breakfast and once for dinner. The time for breakfast had long since passed, leaving Yuan with limited options. He either had to wait until dinner or find his own food through other means. Yuan initially considered fishing for his meal, but after a moment of thought, he realized he didn't have the necessary tools to do so. With a sigh, he abandoned the idea and resigned himself to waiting for dinner. Returning to his living quarters, Yuan settled onto the firm bed, sat in the lotus position and began cultivating once more. Despite the hunger gnawing at him, he focused his mind and absorbed the spiritual energy around him, which helped relieve some of his hunger. Once it was time for dinner, Yuan immediately set out for the cafeteria, eager to finally satisfy his hunger. As he stepped out of his living quarters, he noticed a stream of others leaving their homes as well, all heading in the same direction. Judging by their expressions and hurried steps, it was clear they had also skipped breakfast and endured the consequences throughout the day, much like he had. I can't believe I'm experiencing hunger like a mortal, someone nearby muttered. I didn't even realize it was hunger at first since it'd been so long since I experienced hunger, another voice remarked. I thought I was sick or something. I'm actually kind of excited. This will be my first meal in 100 years, said an old man. When Yuan arrived at the cafeteria, he wasn't surprised to find it packed with people. The flavorful aroma of the food filled the air, making his stomach rumble even louder in anticipation. Without hesitation, he stepped into the line for food. Sometime later, after receiving his food, a simple meal of a bowl of white rice, some vegetables and a single slice of meat, Yuan found an empty seat in the bustling cafeteria. He sat down quietly and began eating, savoring each bite. Despite its simplicity, the food tasted amazing, even heavenly. The meal was neither too filling nor too little, just enough to satisfy Yuan's hunger and replenish some of his energy. After finishing dinner, Yuan returned to his room to cultivate. However, unlike his usual routine of cultivating throughout the night, his current weak body didn't have the stamina to sustain such efforts, so he went to sleep when he became too tired to cultivate. The following day, Yuan visited the cafeteria first thing in the morning to eat breakfast. The cafeteria was just as packed as yesterday. Clearly, everyone had learned their lesson to not skip breakfast. After dinner, Yuan had a brief chat with Lan Yingying to talk about their progress. I spent all of yesterday trying to memorize the cultivation technique, but I still can't make any progress, Lan Yingying said with a sigh. That's normal. It's only been one day after all. Don't forget, you're no longer a genius but an ordinary mortal, Yuan reminded her. How long does it typically take a mortal to memorize a cultivation technique? Lan Yingying inquired. It depends, but it isn't strange for an ordinary person to take months to memorize a cultivation technique. Months? Just to memorize a mortal rank cultivation technique? Lan Yingying swallowed nervously. Yuan chuckled at her reaction and said, It's not easy being ordinary and without talents, is it? Keep in mind, this is the reality most people in the world face every single day. I'll try again today. If I don't make any progress, I'll take a break and start working on my quota, she sighed a moment later. Good luck, said Yuan. A while later, Yuan headed to the training hall to pick up his tools. However, instead of reaching for a sword, he chose 2 water buckets this time. With his body still aching from yesterday's exertions, he decided to take it easier today and focus on the simpler task of gathering water. Carrying the water buckets, he walked to the river to fill them. Once they were full, he returned to the training hall to pour the water into the pots with his house number on it. Chapter 1826 End of the first week in the bamboo garden. Chapter 1826 End of the first week in the bamboo garden. Each water pot could hold up to 50 gallons of water, and the buckets provided to the servants had a capacity of just 1 gallon each. Since every servant was required to fill 2 water pots, they needed to haul a total of 100 gallons of water each week. Yuan carried 2 buckets to the river at a time, meaning it took 50 trips to completely fill both pots. With each trip taking roughly 15 minutes, he spent a little over half a day completing his assigned quota. After dinner, Yuan returned home to cultivate. The following day Yuan met up with Lan Yingying again. "How was it?" he asked her. "I am making progress, albeit extremely slowly. At this rate, it'll probably take me around 3 months to completely memorize the technique," she sighed. "As long as you're making progress. But it's too slow." Lan Yingying shook her head. "Although we have 4 years to complete this task, I don't want to spend so much time here. Also, I doubt we'll be finished after this trial." Yuan lifted his head to gaze at the blue sky and said, "For years is definitely a long time, but there's nothing we can do. Even if we want to leave this place, I don't know if we can without failing the trial." Sometime later, Lan Yingying, who decided to start working on her quota, followed Yuan to the training hall to acquire some tools. Once they started chopping the bamboo, it was clear that Lan Yingying was quite experienced with chopping, something Yuan hadn't expected. "You're quite good at this. You have the perfect posture and motion just like an expert," Yuan remarked after seeing her work. "Besides my cleaning duty, I chop trees often in the mystic realm," she said as she swung her axe. "By the way, why are you using a sword? It'd be more efficient to use an axe," she then asked. Yuan smiled and said, "It feels more comfortable in my hands. Moreover, this is training." "Is that so?" Once they chopped down their first bamboo of the day, Yuan repeated what he had done yesterday and began cultivating with some of the bamboo in his mouth. Lan Yingying raised an eyebrow at his actions. "What are you doing?" She couldn't keep her curiosity contained. "These bamboo contain spiritual energy, so it speeds up my cultivation progress." "I see." Since she couldn't cultivate, Lan Yingying sat down on the ground and took out her cultivation technique, using the time to study it while she rested and waited for Yuan. Once Yuan emerged from his cultivation about half an hour later, they delivered the chopped bamboo before returning to the forest. They repeated this routine until it was almost time for dinner, ending the day with 5 bamboos chopped. "I haven't felt this type of exhaustion in a long time," Lan Yingying muttered as she grabbed her dinner, barely able to hold her plate up from exhaustion. She looked around the dinner area and continued, "Judging by everyone's appearance, very few have started working on their quota. I have a feeling many people will miss their quota this week," Yuan said with a slight smile. "What do you think the punishment will be for them?" Yuan shrugged. "Who knows? Back then, those who missed their quotas would not be allowed to eat and get beaten. If you miss enough quotas, you'll no longer be able to become a disciple. However, they won't just send you back home either. Instead, you'll be forced to work as a servant for the rest of your life." That said, very few people have actually missed enough quotas to receive such punishment. During my several years in the bamboo garden, only one individual suffered such a fate. "Since this is a trial, I'm sure things will be a lot worse," Lan Yingying muttered. Yuan nodded. "That's why we need to make sure we don't miss our quotas." After dinner, Yuan and Lan Yingying returned to their living quarters. For the next 2 days they resumed their routine of chopping bamboo together. "And with that, I am finished with my quota for this week," said Yuan as he chopped his final bamboo. "I still need 5 more bamboos as well as 2 water pots," Lan Yingying sighed. "We only have 2 days left too. If I had skipped another day, I probably would have struggled to finish the quota." "It'll help you out with your quota?" Yuan suddenly said. "No, it's okay. I don't want to become a burden this early on. You should focus on becoming a cultivator as soon as possible. Don't worry about me. I'll be able to manage myself." Yuan nodded and said, "All right. However, if you need help, come to me. This is an order." Lan Yingying acknowledged with a smile, "Yes, young master." For the last 2 days of the week, besides going to the cafeteria, Yuan spent all of his time cultivating inside his room. As for Lan Yingying, she finished her quotas without any issues. Once the first week ended and they began their second week, Senior Zhou gathered everyone at sunrise. "Your first week in the bamboo garden has ended. I knew this was inevitable, but I didn't think so many of you would miss your quotas." Senior Zhou pulled out a storage pouch and retrieved a scroll from within. As he unrolled it, he revealed its contents to everyone, a long list of numbers neatly written across the scroll. "This scroll contains a list of your house numbers and the names of those who failed to meet their quotas," Senior Zhou announced in a stern tone. "There are 815 of you on this list, so the majority of you here have failed to fulfill your quota. Do you think this is a joke? That there are no consequences to your actions? Not only does this look bad on me, your supervisor, but it also affects the Immortal Monastery." "Since my earlier warning was ignored," Senior Zhou said, his tone growing colder, "I will now inform you of the punishment for failing to meet your quotas. The atmosphere grew heavy, and many nervous gulps could be heard from the crowd. Chapter 1827 Punishment for Missing Their Quotas? Chapter 1827 Punishment for Missing Their Quotas. After a moment of silence, Senior Zhou announced the punishment for those who failed their quotas. Everyone who failed their quotas this week will have their quotas doubled for the rest of the month. Moreover, you will only be allowed one meal a day, breakfast. Lastly, your access to the cultivation technique will also be restricted for this week. What? So we can't cultivate for an entire week? Someone exclaimed after hearing the final punishment. That's what I said, no? Senior Zhou responded. Fail your quotas again and it'll turn that week into a month. Of course, it'll also increase your quotas again. If you fail your quotas for a third time, it'll restrict your ability to cultivate for an entire year. After that, you will no longer be allowed to continue working in the bamboo forest, and will have you executed for being insubordinate. Those who had failed to meet their quotas the previous week stood in stunned silence, inwardly regretting their arrogance. Many of them had considered themselves too proud to bother with mundane tasks, and now they were paying the price for their complacency. Some had been so preoccupied with trying to memorize the cultivation technique as quickly as possible that they completely overlooked the quotas. However, the punishment served as a stark reminder, ensuring that nobody would dare to forget them again. As for those of you who have met your quotas, Senior Zhou continued, your quotas will remain unchanged for the rest of this month. Moreover, you'll all be given 10 points which you can use to purchase items. If you want more information on this subject, you can visit the shop. That's all I have to say. We'll see you all here again next week. Senior Zhou turned around and walked away. Once Senior Zhou left completely, the participants began complaining openly. Fuck. What kind of shitty trial is this? What does chopping bamboo and gathering water have anything to do with the Immortal Monastery? This shit is a fucking scam. Right? Why the hell am I being treated like a servant? I am an immortal. Bitch, hey. My cultivation technique is gone. It was in my pocket just moments ago. Someone suddenly realized their cultivation technique had disappeared. Why, you're right. Mine is gone as well. While the crowd grumbled and complained about their situation, Yuan and Lan Yingying quietly slipped away, wasting no time as they set out to start working on their quotas again. 1350 While the crowd grumbled and complained about their situation, Yuan and Lan Yingying quietly slipped away, wasting no time as they set out to start working on their quotas again. What do you think we'll be able to buy with the points? Lan Yingying asked as she swung her axe. Hard to say. We can check out the shop afterward. Okay. After chopping and delivering their first bamboo, Yuan and Lan Yingying noticed that significantly more people had joined in, busy working to fulfill their quotas. Noticing the increased activity, Yuan and Lan Yingying decided to move to a quieter area with fewer people. Since this was a trial and everyone was ultimately competing against each other, they wanted to avoid any unnecessary confrontations. Furthermore, Yuan was keen on keeping his ability to cultivate a secret for as long as possible. After delivering their fifth bamboo, Yuan and Lan Yingying decided to call it a day and made their way to the shop. The shop was a modest, single-story building with a plain interior. Inside there was only one worker present, a young man who seemed to be in charge. Hello, can you tell me what I can purchase with my points? Yuan approached the young man and asked. I've got everything you could possibly need, the young man said with a confident smile. From food and medicine to cultivation resources, if you've got the points, I've got the goods. Then do you have something that can increase my talents? Of course. The young man swiftly retrieved a thin book and placed it on the counter in front of them. Take a look, he said with a casual gesture. Yuan opened the book and scanned its contents. It was filled with an array of treasures, each one more impressive than the last. Flipping through the pages, he recognized a few notable names, such as the translucent dew of flawlessness and other renowned talent-boosting items. However, his excitement quickly turned to disbelief as he noticed their ridiculous prices, many costing points in the millions. Even the cheapest treasure listed required tens of thousands of points. Yuan closed the book shortly after and handed it back to the young man. How much does a meal cost? He then asked. Something similar to what they give at the cafeteria. A cafeteria meal would cost you a single point. Of course, there are more luxurious options available, but they'll cost you more. Although 2 meals a day were just enough for now, Yuan was certain that his appetite would increase as his cultivation progressed. Is there anything else we can use points for? Besides buying items. The young man showed a profound smile and said, Of course. You can buy privileges with points. For example, you can purchase a day or even a week of quotas so that you won't need to do them for that time. Or, you can increase the spiritual energy in a specific area for a certain amount of time. Oh. Yuan raised his eyebrows after hearing this. In that case, how much would it cost to increase the spiritual energy in my home? Let's say for a day. 10 points a day. Yuan narrowed his eyes thoughtfully, already considering whether he should spend points to purchase a day of increased spiritual energy and test how much it could enhance his cultivation progress. A few moments later, Yuan nodded and said, "All right, let me purchase a day of increased spiritual energy at my home, building 423. Very well. I have deducted 10 points from you, ID. For 23 Xiaoyang. Your home, building 423, will have increased spiritual energy for 24 hours. When would you like to use this privilege? How long can I save it for? As long as you want. Then I'll use it right after dinner. Understood. I will activate your privilege an hour after dinner hour ends," said the young man. Thanks. Yuan and Lan Yingying left the store shortly after. Chapter 1828 Privilege. Chapter 1828 Privilege. After leaving the store, Yuan and Lan Yingying returned to their living quarters to clean off the sweat and grime they had accumulated throughout the day. Since their buildings lacked individual bathrooms, they had to make their way to the public bathing area to wash themselves. Once they were clean and refreshed, Yuan and Lan Yingying headed to the cafeteria for dinner. This time the atmosphere was noticeably different. Everyone there looked worn out and exhausted from spending the day working hard to meet their quotas. Of course, the number of people there was also vastly declined due to the ongoing punishment, where the majority of participants are only allowed to eat breakfast. After quickly finishing their meals, Yuan returned home and immediately began cultivating while patiently waiting for his privilege to activate. Exactly an hour after dinner, Yuan sensed a significant leap in his cultivation progress, accompanied by a sudden surge in spiritual energy around him. When he opened his eyes, he could see a faint white mist filling his room. "This is even better than I anticipated," Yuan muttered to himself, a satisfied smile forming on his lips. "Looks like he'll keep spending points on this privilege in the future." His gamble had paid off handsomely, and the increased spiritual energy had amplified his cultivation speed several times over. If he continued cultivating at this rate, Yuan estimated he could achieve a breakthrough to Spirit Apprentice in just 6 months, far faster than the year he initially anticipated. The following day during breakfast, Yuan revealed his progress to Lan Yingying. "In that case, I'll give you my points so that you can speed your cultivation even more," Lan Yingying said. "Are you sure? Even if you cannot cultivate yet, you can still save your points until you can." Lan Yingying nodded. "I want to fulfill my role and be useful to you. Also, it'll benefit me if you become a cultivator faster. I'll feel safer too. If you insist, I'll accept your offer." "Thank you, Yingying." After breakfast, Yuan wasted no time and quickly returned to his living quarters to continue cultivating, as the privilege lasted until an hour after dinner. The following day, Yuan chopped 10 bamboos instead of the usual 5 since he didn't chop any yesterday. Then Lan Yingying used her 10 points to purchase a day of increased spiritual energy at Yuan's home. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and another week had ended. This time, everyone had fulfilled their quotas. Senior Zhou was pleased with the results and said, "This is good. Continue behaving and we won't have any problems. Unless someone misses their quotas or I have something to announce, we won't need to meet every week." Senior Zhou dismissed everyone and quickly disappeared. Afterward, everyone went to get breakfast. During breakfast, Yuan noticed that nearly everyone seemed to be discussing the same topic. "Did you hear? We can use our points to speed up our memorization process." "What? How much does it cost? And how effective is it?" "It costs 2 points per page and it guarantees that we can memorize a page in a day. There are 40 pages in the cultivation technique. So 80 points in total, huh? That's 8 weeks of quotas. If you don't try to memorize the cultivation technique yourself, you'd need to spend the full amount. I have already memorized 6 pages by myself, so I saved 12 points so far." "The privilege of memorizing the cultivation technique faster, huh?" Lan Yingying mumbled. Seeing her pondering face, Yuan smiled and said, "You don't need to worry about me. You can use those points for yourself if you want." "Huh? Oh, I wasn't thinking about that. While it does sound interesting, I am satisfied with my current progress. I have already memorized 15 pages after all. I should fully memorize the cultivation technique within a month." 15 pages already? You could barely memorize a page at the beginning. I think it was mainly because I wasn't familiar with human cultivation techniques, Lan Yingying said. Now that I'm somewhat used to it, I find it much easier to memorize the contents. Unexpectedly, Lan Yingying was progressing much faster than most of the participants despite being a beast. After breakfast, the two of them went to collect water. However, on the way there they were stopped by a young man and a young woman. "Hey, are you two from the sixth heaven?" the young woman asked them. "Why do you want to know?" Yuan calmly responded. "Judging by your response, you're most definitely from the sixth heaven. We're both from the Duan family in the eighth heaven. If you assist us, we'll make sure to compensate you greatly once the trial is over," said the young man. "Duan family from the eighth heaven? Sorry, never heard of them." Yuan shook his head. His response caused the pair to frown, but they quickly fixed their expressions and said, "If you haven't heard of us, you can ask around. We're an elite and prestigious powerhouse in the eighth heaven." "And what does your elite and prestigious family want from us?" Yuan asked. "It's quite simple. Help us with this trial by giving us your points," said the young woman. Yuan did not appear surprised at all by their request. In fact, he anticipated it. "Sorry, but we've already spent our points." "That's fine. You can just give us your future points." "Unfortunately, we'll be using those too." The pair frowned at Yuan's clear defiance and the young man spoke coldly, "Okay, I am done being nice. Listen here, you bastard. If you don't give us your points, I will make your life a living hell in here and once we return to the outside world." After a brief silence, Yuan let out a sigh and raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Alright, you win. We'll give you our future points. Just don't hurt us." Hearing this, the young man and woman exchanged smug glances, haughty smiles spreading across their faces as they reveled in their apparent victory. Chapter 1829 Duan Siblings? Chapter 1829 Duan Siblings, at least you know your place. "Come to the store when you receive your points next week," said the young woman a moment later. "Don't think of doing anything funny because you can't run or hide in this place," the young man continued. "Of course. We wouldn't dare," Yuan reassured them that they'd hand over their points with a weak smile. Once the young man and young woman left, Lan Yingying looked at Yuan with raised eyebrows and spoke, "So what are we really going to do?" She didn't believe for a second that Yuan was being serious just now. He smiled and said, "We'll use the points for ourselves, of course. I just didn't feel like dealing with them right now, so I said what they wanted to hear to make them leave peacefully. But we'll have to deal with them again eventually. Then we'll deal with them at that time." Lan Yingying nodded, and the two of them went to collect water, acting as if nothing had happened. The following week, Yuan made his way to the store alone. "You're finally here," said the young man. "Where's that woman who was with you last time? Don't tell me she ran away?" The young woman asked with a frown when she noticed Lan Yingying was absent. "Huh? What are you talking about? In fact, who are you?" Yuan asked, looking genuinely puzzled. "Bastard, what are you trying to pull here? I thought I warned you about having funny ideas." The young man exclaimed angrily. The commotion quickly drew the attention of others in the store. Since it was the start of a new week and everyone had just received their points, the store was more crowded than usual. "Isn't that Duan Xiao and his sister, Duan Shuchun? What are they up to this time? I heard they've been going around threatening people for their points." "Seriously? I bet they're only going after those from the sixth heaven. He wouldn't be foolish or bold enough to go after those with more influence than him. What a sore sight." The Duan siblings could hear the others talking badly about them, but they calmly ignored it. "Bastard, this is your last chance. Hand over your points and we'll pretend nothing happened today," Duan Xiao said, his expression growing increasingly aggressive. Without uttering a single word, Yuan began walking toward Duan Xiao with a calm yet deliberate demeanor. The moment he was within arm's reach, Yuan moved swiftly and with precision, extending his hands in a fluid motion to grasp Duan Xiao's neck firmly. The sudden and bold action left everyone in the store utterly stunned, their eyes widening in shock at the unexpected turn of events. What do you think you're doing to my brother? Are you courting death? Hurry and let him go." Duan Shuchun exclaimed in a panicked voice. Yuan paid no attention to her protests and slowly hoisted Duan Xiao's body into the air. Though he wasn't a cultivator yet, the spiritual energy he had absorbed had greatly enhanced his physical strength, enough to overpower the other participants with little effort. Knowing your character, you're most likely one of those being punished for missing their first week's quotas. In fact, I am willing to bet all of my points on it. Why are you trying to be a gangster when you should be focusing on fulfilling your quota? Why? "Oh, you've managed to become a cultivator already?" Duan Xiao muttered in disbelief. "If I were a cultivator, I would have already long left this place. Why would I subject myself to such mundane chores like some servant?" Yuan sneered. What are you going to do to me? If you dare to injure me, my family will come after you." "I don't know. I could break one of your arms and legs so you won't be able to finish your quotas, or I can just kill you right now." Yuan listed his options out loud, dumbfounding the spectators. Duan Xiao's body trembled uncontrollably, his face pale and his expression consumed by sheer dread. Please spare him." Duan Shuchun grabbed his arm and begged. "We won't bother you again. We swear it." "Humph." Yuan coldly sneered before tossing Duan Xiao aside like trash. "There might be a punishment for killing others, so I'll spare you this time. However, if you ever dare to appear before me again, I'll kill you regardless of the punishment." Duan Xiao wanted to respond, but he was busy coughing and gasping for air. "Also, don't even bother trying to threaten me with your background. After all, I never said that I came from the sixth heaven. That was only your assumption." Duan Xiao's eyes widened after realizing his mistake. "You can leave now," Yuan said to them and turned around, no longer bothering with them. The Duan siblings could only grit their teeth and leave the store, feeling embarrassed and humiliated by the whole ordeal. "This is not the end. Just you wait. They'll definitely make you pay for this humiliation tenfold." Duan Xiao muttered in a low voice as he walked away. Sometime later, Yuan approached the young man working at the store and purchased another day of improved spiritual energy for 10 points. The usual privilege. "Sure thing, ID 423. As Yuan walked out of the store, he was intercepted by several individuals. However, their demeanor didn't seem hostile. Instead, they appeared curious. "Excuse me. We apologize for bothering you, but we have to ask, how did you become so strong without becoming a cultivator? Everyone here should have started on the same playing field. Of course, we're willing to compensate you with points for the information." Yuan then responded, "There's no secret. I just happened to progress a little faster than everyone." Despite saying that, it did not convince the people before him, who argued, "You must be doing something different. Did you purchase a unique privilege? One that allows you to strengthen your body?" "Please, I'm willing to pay you 10 points if it helps me get stronger." Chapter 1830 Small Groups? Chapter 1830 Small Groups, "There's really no secret," Yuan said, shaking his head. "If you don't want to believe me, there's nothing I can do." He glanced at them briefly before adding, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go work on my quotas." Without waiting for a response or giving them a chance to press further, Yuan turned and walked away, leaving the group behind. Once Yuan left, the people who stopped him approached the young man and asked, "What privilege did you sell that young man just now?" "I'm sorry, but I cannot disclose such information," said the young man. "Then do you sell privileges that can strengthen our bodies?" one of them asked. "No, we do not have such privileges." Hearing this, the people began speculating how Yuan acquired his strength. Although he is not a cultivator, he didn't say that he hadn't started cultivating. There's a good chance he's already fully memorized the cultivation technique and began cultivating. That would explain his overwhelming strength. That's quite hard to believe, honestly. It's only been 3 weeks since we arrived at the hidden domain. Most of us have barely memorized 10 pages, let alone the whole thing, and I do not believe he's more talented than all of us. Even if he used all of his points to memorize the cultivation technique quicker, I doubt he has enough to fully memorize the technique. What if he had help from others? With enough assistance, any of us could afford it. Even if that's the case and he had enough points, he'd still need a day to memorize a single page. Moreover, to achieve that level of strength, he must have cultivated for some time. None of this is adding up. Let's forget about how he achieved his strength for now. Do we even know his identity? I recognize most people in this bamboo garden, but I don't recognize him at all. Nope, I have never seen him before. I don't even recall seeing him entering the hidden domain, and I entered later than most. These people were now more intrigued by Yuan's background than by the source of his strength, and they decided to pay more attention to him from this moment forth. Meanwhile, after leaving the store, Yuan reunited with Lan Yingying to continue chopping bamboo. Thanks to his significantly enhanced strength from cultivating, he was now able to effortlessly chop down 20 bamboo stalks in a single day, far surpassing his previous efforts. "Did anything happen at the store?" Lan Yingying asked him as they worked. "A little. I threatened those 2 idiots, so they probably won't be bothering us for some time." "Only for some time? So they'll be back?" Idiots like them tend to return once they regain their confidence. However, if they do, I won't let them go a second time. I only let them go with a warning this time because there might be consequences for hurting other participants. Once I become a cultivator, that should no longer be an issue. Are you close to reaching Spirit Apprentice? Lan Yingying asked. Yuan nodded. Yes, I should reach Spirit Apprentice in 2 weeks, right at the end of the punishment period. Are you going to immediately join the Immortal Monastery after becoming a cultivator? She then asked. And leave you here alone? No, I won't do that. But, no buts. I will stay here until I am certain of your safety. Lan Yingying understood Yuan well enough to know there was no point in trying to change his mind, so she chose to accept it. While she felt a bit frustrated with herself for slowing him down, a small part of her was also happy that he was going to stay by her side. After dinner, Yuan returned to his living quarters and began his cultivation, and for the rest of the week he would only emerge from his room to eat breakfast and dinner with Lan Yingying since he had already finished his quota. Time flew by, and before they knew it, 2 weeks had passed. During this time, more and more people started working together, forming small groups. Yuan was approached by many people as his reputation had long spread, but he refused to join anyone. When these people failed to recruit Yuan, they went after Lan Yingying since she was the closest to him. When Lan Yingying told Yuan about this, he actually advised her to join a group. After all, he'd feel more at ease if she had a group in case he was forced to leave after becoming a cultivator. Lan Yingying took Yuan's advice and joined a small group with 2 other female participants, both of whom were also divine beasts. What is your relationship with Xiaoyang? I always see the 2 of you together, asked by Xian, who was an earth-sundering rock from the 7th heaven. I am the young master's contracted beast. He's a beast tamer, said Lan Yingying. What family is he from? Asked the other beast in the group, a young phoenix named Yen Yiling. She was from a phoenix clan in the 8th heaven. He's actually from a hidden family, so even I don't know what his real background is. Seriously? What made you form a contract with him? I wouldn't be able to trust someone I know nothing about. I don't care about his family background since I know the young master himself very well. After all, I formed a contract with him, not his family. The young master saved not only my life but also my family's as well. I am forever in debt to him. What about the 2 of you? Have you ever thought about forming a contract? Lan Yingying then asked. Of course not. My family would kill me if I formed a contract with humans, Yen Yiling said, her expression twisting with disgust at the very thought. We phoenixes are far too proud to degrade ourselves like that. Even those with weaker bloodlines wouldn't consider such a thing. I've thought about it before, but I never seriously considered it, Bai Xian said calmly. There's simply no one worthy. Is that so? Chapter 1831 10,000 points. Chapter 1831 10,000 points. While Lan Yingying was chatting with her new friends, Yuan was on the verge of becoming a cultivator inside his room. After dedicating just over a month to cultivation and using every single point he had, along with Lan Yingying's points, to enhance the spiritual energy around him, Yuan finally absorbed enough to attempt a breakthrough. However, simply accumulating enough spiritual energy didn't guarantee a successful breakthrough. Without sufficient talent or understanding, there was a significant chance that one would need multiple attempts to succeed. Failing to break through came with a cost. Each failure resulted in the loss of a portion of the accumulated spiritual energy, forcing the individual to absorb even more to try again. This was one of several reasons why it had taken Tian 3 years to become a cultivator. Not only did he lack talent, but he also had zero knowledge of cultivation, causing him to fail several times in trying to achieve Spirit Apprentice. As for Yuan, while he definitely does not lack the experience or knowledge, his current body lacked talent, so there was a decent chance he'd fail to break through. If he were to fail to break through, he'd need to wait another week for a second attempt. Fortunately, Yuan managed to successfully break free from his mortal shackles on his very first attempt, advancing to the first level of Spirit Apprentice. After successfully becoming a cultivator, Yuan immediately felt his body grow stronger and his senses sharpen. However, the improvement was far from what he desired. Compared to when he first became a cultivator in his real body, the growth was so minimal that it was barely noticeable. Although the results are somewhat disappointing, it's still better than when Tian became a cultivator. Yuan mumbled with a bittersweet smile. Now that he'd become a cultivator, Yuan had to see if the trial would automatically move him out of the bamboo garden. However, when many minutes passed without anything happening, Yuan was convinced that he needed to reveal the truth to Senior Zhou in order to move on from this trial. The following morning Yuan and the others gathered outside as Senior Zhou prepared to make an announcement. As I thought, he is just a mortal. Yuan thought to himself after seeing Senior Zhou again. Now that Yuan had become a cultivator and could sense spiritual energy clearly, he confirmed that Senior Zhou was just a mortal like the others present. However, there was a small amount of spiritual energy in Senior Zhou's dantian, indicating that he was at least cultivating. This was great news to Yuan since Senior Zhou would not be able to tell that he had already become a cultivator, allowing him to stay in the bamboo garden for as long as he wanted. Looks like everyone here has successfully fulfilled their quotas this past month, including those who had their quotas doubled as punishment, said Senior Zhou as he scanned the crowd. I've mentioned this before, but your quotas will gradually increase the longer you stay in the bamboo garden, Senior Zhou continued. Starting today, everyone will need to collect 30 bamboo instead of 20 and fill 5 water pots instead of 2 to meet their quotas. The announcement caused a visible reaction among the participants, with many expressions shifting to frustration as they processed the increased demands. Any questions? Someone immediately raised their hand and asked, since our quotas increased, does this mean the amount of points we acquire will also increase? Senior Zhou smiled and responded, I'm glad someone finally brought this up. While your points will remain unchanged, there are ways to acquire more points. If you have already fulfilled your quotas for the week, you can continue to gather more materials for bonus points. You will get 1 extra point for every 5 bamboos you gather and 1 point for every 10 water pots you fill. What? We could have done that this entire time. Why didn't you say so earlier? Someone exclaimed after hearing this information. You never asked, Senior Zhou calmly responded, dumbfounding many people present. Are there any more ways to earn extra points? Another participant inquired. There are, but these options will only be available once you become a disciple of the Immortal Monastery. Hearing this, Yuan asked, when we become a cultivator and leave this place, will we be able to return? Unfortunately, we are quite far away from the Immortal Monastery. Once you leave the bamboo garden, you will no longer be able to return. Do we have to leave the moment we become a cultivator? Lan Yingying then asked. No, but I don't see why you would want to remain here when you can do so much more at the Immortal Monastery as a disciple. Speaking of becoming a disciple, has anyone here started cultivating yet? Nobody raised their hands. Senior Zhou let out a weary sigh and said, looks like I drew the short straw. The other groups already have several individuals who've started cultivating, but we're the only ones who haven't made any progress yet. What other groups? Many people subconsciously blurted out at once. What else but the other 19,000 people who came here with you? I have been wondering about the others ever since we arrived. Where are they? Will we be able to see them? The others are located in their own bamboo garden, and no, you are not allowed to contact them. You will only be able to do so once you've arrived inside the Immortal Monastery. The participants began mumbling to each other after learning of this information. By the way, the first person to reach the Immortal Monastery amongst all 20 groups will receive 10,000 points as a reward. The first person in this group to become a disciple will receive 1,000 points. Points are important even beyond this place, especially in the Immortal Monastery, so it would be in your best interest to acquire as many as you can. 10,000 points? The crowd of participants was filled with nervous anticipation, the sound of collective gulps echoing through the air. Their eyes sparkled with a mixture of desire and determination at the mention of such a large reward. Chapter 1832 threatened. Chapter 1832 threatened. As soon as Senior Zhou dismissed them, a flurry of movement erupted among the participants, with many rushing back to their living quarters. Their intentions were obvious. Everyone was eager to be the one to claim the coveted 10,000 points. Even if they couldn't be the first to reach the goal among all the groups, there was still the opportunity to earn 1,000 points, which was more than enough to motivate them to give it their all. Lan Yingying and Yuan lingered while everyone left. Although neither of them spoke, Yuan could sense what Lan Yingying wanted to say. Her hesitant expression and the way she kept glancing at him made her thoughts clear without needing words. 10,000 points is definitely very tempting, but no amount of points will make me leave you alone, he said. Don't worry, we have plenty of time. Worst case scenario, I'll get 1,000 points. 1 month, Lan Yingying said. Regardless of my situation, I want you to leave within 1 month. 10,000 points is too much to ignore. Moreover, I will never be able to sleep properly in the future if you lose this opportunity because of me. Seeing Lan Yingying's resolute expression, Yuan nodded, Alright, I'll leave within 1 month. While I am here, I will help you progress your cultivation. Shortly afterward, he and Lan Yingying set off to the forest to begin their work. Now that Yuan had become a cultivator, chopping bamboo required far less effort, enabling him to earn bonus points without tiring himself out. When Yuan first started, it had taken him over 100 strikes to chop down a single stalk of bamboo. Now, thanks to his enhanced strength, he could bring them down with just 3 to 4 strikes, making the task significantly faster. In just half an hour, Yuan completed his weekly quota for the bamboo, as well as Lan Yingying's portion. I'll continue chopping bamboo since it's far more efficient than fetching water, Yuan said to Lan Yingying. Alright. I'll go finish our water quotas while you chop bamboo, said Lan Yingying. By the end of the day, Yuan had chopped down an impressive 250 additional bamboo, earning himself 50 bonus points. He was cutting them down so quickly that the process of transporting and getting them verified took more time than the chopping itself. After dinner, Yuan went to the store and asked, "Do you sell storage pouches or spatial rings?" He'd rather invest some points into storage pouches to save time, which would allow him to earn more points. We do sell storage pouches and spatial rings. Here are the prices. The smallest and cheapest storage pouch was priced at only 10 points, but it could hold just 10 bamboos at a time. On the other hand, the largest storage pouch, costing 50 points, offered significantly more capacity, able to store up to 75 bamboo in a single trip. The spatial ring had only one option available. It cost 100 points but allowed him to carry up to 200 bamboo at once. Yuan decided to purchase the spatial ring. Of course, since he didn't have enough points at the moment, he had to come back after earning 50 more points. The following day, Yuan returned to the store and purchased the spatial ring without hesitation. With the spatial ring in his possession, Yuan's productivity soared. He could now chop and transport over 500 bamboos a day, earning him more than 100 points daily. I can earn 100 points a day just from chopping bamboo. If I continue this every day for a week, I will almost have enough to match the reward for being the first in this group to graduate from this trial. Realizing this, Yuan wondered if he should even bother being the first to leave early. Of course, there was also the possibility that there may be other rewards for being the first to become a disciple, something Senior Zhou might fail to mention or purposefully didn't disclose. Moreover, there might be faster ways to acquire points as a disciple of the Immortal Monastery. After pondering for some time, Yuan decided to wait a little longer before he came to a decision. After all, he already decided to stay in the bamboo garden for at least a month. For now, he wanted to focus on earning as many bonus points as possible. By the end of the week, Yuan had amassed a little over 600 points just from chopping bamboo. Naturally, this attracted the attention of every participant in the bamboo garden, and there was not a single individual who wasn't shocked to learn about it. What? He's earning 100 points a day from chopping bamboo? That'd require him to chop 500 bamboos a day. That's impossible. I watched him load off 200 bamboos at once. He even has a spatial ring which costs 100 points at the store. Fuck. Most of us are struggling to finish our quotas, and he's out here earning 100 points a day? There's no way he's not a cultivator already. Why wouldn't he leave if he's already a cultivator? Does he plan on chopping bamboo for 4 years to collect as many points as he can? That seems pointless unless he came to the hidden domain specifically to collect points for some reason. After learning how many points Yuan was earning, nearly every individual in his group approached him in hopes of acquiring some of his points. Naturally, Yuan refused to help anyone, except for a few individuals. Not only did Yuan help Lan Yingying memorize the cultivation technique with points, as well as purchase many days of increased spiritual energy at her home, he also helped out the 2 divine beasts in her group with their cultivation technique. Of course, the other participants were not willing to accept Yuan's rejection and began threatening him together. A few days later, a massive group of people approached Yuan and surrounded him. There are almost 1,000 of us here. Even if you've already become a cultivator, do you really think you'll be able to defeat all of us by yourself? Duan Xiao returned to threaten him after learning of the situation and receiving the others' support. Chapter 1833 Massacre in the Bamboo Garden. Chapter 1833 Massacre in the Bamboo Garden. Despite being surrounded by hundreds of people, Yuan remained calm. He looked directly at Duan Xiao and spoke nonchalantly, "I knew you'd come back to cause trouble, but even I couldn't have anticipated it would be this soon. You can act calm all you want, but we all know you can't defeat so many of us by yourself." Duan Xiao laughed out loud. If Yuan had his original body, he would have definitely been able to defeat all of them, even 10,000 of them alone. However, his current body lacked the talent and abilities his original body possessed, so Duan Xiao was right. Even if Yuan was a cultivator and his opponents were mere mortals, he would not have the energy to defeat so many at once. Moreover, these mortals had vast experience as cultivators, and some had also started cultivating, so they were more powerful than ordinary mortals who had never cultivated before. Fortunately, he didn't need to defeat all of them. Yuan was confident that he'd only need to kill some of them to scare away the rest. After all, no matter if one is a mortal or cultivator, everyone fears death. I will give everyone here a chance to walk away. Otherwise, don't blame my sword for not having eyes, said Yuan as he retrieved 2 swords from his spatial ring, wielding one in each hand. These 2 swords were different from the ones acquired from the training hall. It was much sharper, even emitting a profound aura. Even as mortals, the participants immediately recognized the swords as spirit-grade treasures. Yuan had purchased the swords shortly after buying his spatial ring, paying 50 points for each. Ever since Yuan noticed that he was drawing the attention of others, he became aware of the possibility that some might try to cause trouble for him. His rapid progress and success were bound to stir jealousy and ulterior motives among the participants. I knew something like this would happen, so I took the liberty to prepare myself beforehand. I will not hesitate to slay anyone who threatens me. You have 3 seconds to decide whether you want to die today or live to continue the trial. Upon hearing Yuan's words, many participants left Duan Xiao's group, about 30%, as they were not willing to risk their lives. Moreover, even if they weren't part of the group, they would still benefit from Yuan's death if the others managed to defeat him. Duan Xiao frowned upon seeing so many people leave the formation. You cowardly bastards. Don't think you'll get away scot-free. Well, take care of everyone that left once we take care of him. Duan Xiao roared. Hearing this, some of the people who left returned to the formation. The rest were willing to take the risk. Your time is over. I'll start with you, Yuan spoke as he dashed at Duan Xiao, who was the closest to him. Seeing the attack coming, Duan Xiao hastily raised the sword he had taken from the training hall to block Yuan's strike. However, Yuan's spirit-grade sword effortlessly sliced through Duan Xiao's weapon before cutting one of his arms. Ah! Duan Xiao screamed in pain as blood sprayed from his wound. Yuan ignored his screaming and swung his other sword, decapitating Duan Xiao before the others could even react. And no, brother. Duan Shuchun screamed in terror after seeing Duan Xiao being slain before her eyes. Duan Xiao's death jolted everyone out of their daze, and without hesitation, they began attacking Yuan with their weapons. Yuan didn't hesitate to fight back, meeting the onslaught head-on. His superior strength, speed, and stamina gave him the edge, allowing him to overwhelm his opponents one by one with ease. However, as formidable as Yuan was, he was still just one person facing hundreds. It was impossible to avoid injury entirely. Yet, through precise movements and calculated defense, he managed to keep his injuries superficial and non-life-threatening. In just 3 minutes, Yuan had slayed over 100 individuals, their corpses piling around him, making it harder for the others to get close as well as messing with their movements. After sustaining enough injuries, Yuan calmly retrieved a recovery pill he had purchased for 5 points each and consumed it. Within moments, his wounds began to heal, and his stamina was restored, leaving him revitalized and ready to continue the fight. That's ridiculous, the participants exclaimed in disbelief, watching as Yuan recovered right before their eyes. Their hopes of overpowering him with numbers plummeted rapidly, replaced by a growing sense of despair and frustration. Don't worry, there's plenty where that came from. Yuan laughed madly as he consumed another pill before he continued slaughtering everyone around him. As the participants' morale plummeted, Yuan's momentum only grew stronger. His relentless attacks and growing killing intent overwhelmed them, and before long the tide turned. One by one the participants began to abandon the fight, retreating in fear and defeat, their initial confidence shattered. Where do you think you're going? Yuan shouted, his voice cold. If you came to kill me, you'd better be prepared to face death yourself. Showing no mercy, Yuan pursued those attempting to flee, cutting down anyone who stood in his path. Please. I came from the 9th. My Yi family will not forgive if you. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Stop. Stop this madness. We were wrong. Have mercy. Yuan showed no hesitation, cutting down his opponents without regard for their backgrounds or pleas. Like a relentless force of nature, reminiscent of his days as the evil god, he swung his sword madly, each strike claiming a life. By the time he stopped, over 90% of the group had been slaughtered, their bodies strewn across the area outside the living quarters. The ground was soaked with blood, forming a gruesome pond that bore witness to the carnage. The once bustling space was now a haunting scene of silence and death. What in heaven's name happened here? Senior Zhou arrived at the scene just as Yuan ended his slaughter, his face filled with shock and terror. Chapter 1834 Massacre in the Bamboo Garden 2. Chapter 1834 Massacre in the Bamboo Garden 2. When Senior Zhou arrived at the scene, he was immediately struck by an overwhelming sense of fear, unlike anything he had ever experienced. The sight of the piled corpses and the thick metallic stench of blood in the air hit him like a wave. His stomach churned violently, and he fell to his knees, vomiting everything he had eaten as the grisly reality of the massacre set in. They ganged up and threatened me, so I killed them in self-defense. Is that an issue? Yuan asked in a nonchalant voice, acting like he'd only killed a few insects. I expected some casualties from infighting, Senior Zhou said with a heavy sigh, his voice tinged with frustration and disbelief. But you killed nearly everyone in Group 8. He rubbed his temples in a stressed manner, as though trying to process the sheer scale of the slaughter that had unfolded before him. Whatever. It's not against the rules to kill other participants, and it's not like I can punish you who is already qualified to be a disciple. So, when will you enter the Immortal Monastery? Once I take care of those that got away, Yuan calmly responded. A few individuals had gotten away due to the sheer amount of people he had to fight, but had already made up his mind to kill everyone who ganged up on him. You're still going to kill more? Senior Zhou was speechless, but there was truly nothing he could do. Once a servant qualified to be a disciple, even if they hadn't become a disciple yet, they were automatically above his authority, so Yuan could kill everyone in the bamboo garden and nothing would happen to him. Yuan left the scene shortly after, determined to hunt down those who had managed to escape. Those who had backed out of the fight early let out sighs of relief as they realized Yuan was ignoring them. However, the terror he had instilled in them was overwhelming. None of them dared to even glance in his direction, afraid that the slightest provocation might make him change his mind and turn his blade toward them. Meanwhile, Lan Yingying and her group had been cultivating inside their room this entire time, so they were unaware of the massacre that had taken place, that their competition had decreased by over 90% in just a single day. After eliminating the remaining threats, at least those who weren't hiding inside their homes, Yuan calmly returned to the forest and resumed chopping bamboo, as if the earlier carnage had been nothing more than a passing inconvenience. By the time Yuan returned, all traces of the massacre had vanished. The corpses were gone, and even the blood-soaked soil appeared completely untouched, as if it had never been disturbed. At dinner, Lan Yingying looked around with raised eyebrows. Did something happen? There's hardly anyone here, Lan Yingying asked Yuan. I killed most of them, Yuan calmly answered. Huh. Lan Yingying's eyes widened. Yuan explained the situation, leaving her speechless. I anticipated there would be some trouble, but to think it involved almost everyone in our group. Are you okay? Honestly, it was a tough fight. If it weren't for the recovery pills and my spirit-grade swords, I would have probably died today, he chuckled. Lan Yingying's jaw dropped. She couldn't fathom how he could laugh about almost dying. What about those who died? Will they be forced out of the hidden domain in their real bodies, or? Lan Yingying asked. Who knows? But we should assume dying in this trial means dying for real, Yuan said. Meanwhile, Yen Yiling and Bai Ziyan from Lan Yingying's group were bewildered after learning of the situation. Heavens! He killed everyone? Yen Yiling almost couldn't believe her ears. He even chased after those who fled? How brutal. I'm glad I wasn't there. Bai Ziyan sighed in relief. In fact, the events that transpired in Group 8 were so shocking and ruthless that news of the massacre quickly spread to the other groups. Everyone who heard about it was left stunned, unable to comprehend the scale of what had occurred or the ruthless strength of the one responsible. Group 8? Isn't that Yuan and Lan Yingying's group? I hope they're fine. She merely muttered to herself after hearing about it. No, knowing Yuan, he's probably the one who did the massacre. In the days that followed, the atmosphere within Group 8 was eerily quiet and peaceful. The survivors of Yuan's massacre avoided him with absolute dread, treating him as if he were the plague itself. Those who had managed to survive by hiding in their living quarters found themselves paralyzed with fear. Many chose to fail their quotas rather than risk stepping outside and potentially crossing paths with Yuan again, their terror overshadowing any sense of duty or consequence. At the end of the week, Senior Zhou summoned everyone for the usual gathering to announce those who had failed to meet their quotas. This time there were 5 names on the list, all individuals absent from the gathering. Regardless of your circumstances, failure to fulfill your quotas will result in punishment. Those on this list will have their quotas doubled for 1 month, and they will also be restricted from cultivating for 1 month. Senior Zhou dismissed everyone once he finished his announcement, but he stayed behind to speak with Yuan this time. "When are you going to leave?" he asked Yuan. "I'll leave soon. You said that last week. At this rate you'll lose your advantage in 10,000 points. So someone is close to becoming a cultivator, huh? I'm not supposed to reveal any information on the other groups, but since you're basically a disciple already, I will tell you that someone from Group 3 is close to becoming a cultivator." "Group 3? That's Ji Ran's group," Yuan thought to himself. Yuan was certain this individual was Ji Ran. As the Immortal Monastery sect leader, he would have also memorized the cultivation technique before entering the hidden domain. Chapter 1835 Joining the Immortal Monastery. Chapter 1835 Joining the Immortal Monastery. Are there any special rewards for being the first to become a disciple? Besides the 10,000 points, obviously, Yuan inquired. "I am not aware of any other rewards, but I am just a worker in the bamboo garden, so I don't know everything." Senior Zhou shook his head. "Is that so? Anyway, I'll leave once I am ready to leave. 10,000 points may seem like a lot at first, but if you consider that some things from the store cost millions of points, it's just a drop in the bucket. I'm sure there are ways to earn thousands of points with minimal effort once I become a disciple." Senior Zhou was left speechless. "I have never left the bamboo garden, so I can't tell you if you're right or wrong, but if you don't want that 10,000 points, there's nothing I can do to force it on you." With that, Senior Zhou turned around and walked away. Once Senior Zhou left, Yuan returned to his routine. Meanwhile, Lan Yingying continued spending all of her time cultivating after fully memorizing the cultivation technique. Now that he was earning plenty of points, Yuan used some of them to help Lan Yingying with her quotas, paying for 3 months of quotas for her so that she could completely focus on her cultivation. A week later, Senior Zhou gathered the participants again. Those who had missed their quotas last week also missed another week, making that their 3rd strike. Everyone on this list has missed their quotas 3 times. Their quotas will be doubled for an entire year, and they will also be prohibited from cultivating during that time. If they miss another quota, they will be executed. Everyone there turned to look at Yuan, as he was the reason these people missed their quotas. However, Yuan didn't appear to have any pity for these people, who had threatened and attacked him out of greed. After the announcement, Yuan approached Senior Zhou and asked, "Has anyone become a disciple yet?" "No, but it won't be much longer," he said. "In that case, I'll become the first." "Really?" Senior Zhou's eyes widened, pleasantly surprised to hear this. "Yes, but give me a few more minutes." Before leaving, he spoke with Lan Yingying. "You don't need to worry about me. I have already begun cultivating, and since you've already paid for 3 months of quotas, I can focus on my cultivation. I'll come to you as soon as I become a cultivator," Lan Yingying said to him. Yuan nodded before turning to look at Yen Yiling and Bai Zian and speaking, "I'll leave her in your care. Don't worry, we won't let anyone bully her. We owe you after all." If Yuan hadn't shared some of his points with them, they'd still be struggling to memorize the cultivation technique. Yuan ended their conversation there and said to Senior Zhou, "I am ready to become a disciple." "Very well. Take this and inject your spiritual energy into it. It will take you to the Immortal Monastery." Senior Zhou handed him a jade talisman. After accepting the jade talisman, Yuan infused it with his spiritual energy. In an instant, his body disappeared from Lan Yingying and the others' sight, leaving them staring at the now empty space where he had stood. In Yuan's eyes, his surroundings blurred and flickered for a brief moment, as though reality itself was shifting. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing before a large gate with the sign Immortal Monastery grandly displayed above. "I see another have crawled out of the bamboo garden," a handsome young man suddenly remarked, standing beside the gate. His gaze was filled with disdain, his expression almost mocking, as if he were looking at a beggar who had wandered into the wrong place. "Although you've become a cultivator and are technically a disciple of the Immortal Monastery, don't let it go to your head," the young man said firmly. "You're just someone who came from the bamboo garden. You're not a real disciple in my eyes." "Is that so?" Yuan calmly muttered, showing no sign of surprise at the awful treatment. He had encountered the same situation in the past as Tianyang and knew what to expect. Tianyang had become a disciple through the bamboo garden, one of several ways to join the sect. However, this method was widely looked down upon by other disciples, especially those who entered through more proper avenues, such as entrance examinations or direct recruitment by the sect. The bamboo garden was generally reserved for individuals from ordinary backgrounds, typically those lacking the talent, resources, or connections needed to pursue the more proper and respected methods of joining the sect. As a result, disciples who came from the bamboo garden were often viewed as inferior and bullied by their peers. If you want to survive in this place, you better walk with your head lowered and treat the real disciples as if they're your ancestors. Otherwise, you won't last long in this place. Thank you for the advice. I'll make sure to keep that in mind. Humph. The young man said nothing further, simply turning around and walking away, his disdainful demeanor lingering in the air. Once he was completely out of sight, Yuan's attention shifted to a small figure quickly approaching him from a distance. The person's hurried movements and slightly panicked expression immediately caught Yuan's attention. Unlike the young man clad in a disciple's uniform, the small figure wore the plain attire of a servant. Similar to the setup in the bamboo garden, the Immortal Monastery employed mortals to serve as servants, handling various mundane tasks to support the sect's daily operations. As the figure drew closer, Yuan realized that the person only seemed small due to a hunched back. In reality, it was an elderly man. I am sorry for greeting the young master so late. I didn't dare come out until, it's fine. I understand. That guy just now was very menacing after all. Yuan showed a warm smile, catching the old man off guard. After snapping out of his daze, the old man straightened slightly, as much as his hunched back allowed, and introduced himself. This humble one's surname is Zhai, he said with a respectful tone. I will be assisting you in settling into the sect. Chapter 1836 Golden Spirit Pill. Chapter 1836 Golden Spirit Pill. You can call me Old Zhai. Please follow me, young master, Old Zhai said as he turned around and began leading Yuan to the living quarters for outer court disciples. Since you are the first one to come here, you may choose your own living quarters, said Old Zhai as they entered the residential area. Yuan nodded and walked straight to the building Tianyang used to live in, Building 913, which was located in the middle of the residential area. After Yuan took the keys to the building, Old Zhai brought him to the distributing hall that was right outside the residential area. There, Yuan was given his uniform, a small leather pouch that contained a few spirit stones, a map of the sect, and a rule book that contained every rule a disciple must follow as a disciple of the Immortal Monastery. My job ends here, young master. However, if you ever need help with something, don't hesitate to find me, Old Zhai said to him as they left the distribution hall. I have a few questions, Yuan swiftly said. I will try my best to answer them. What is my goal in the Immortal Monastery? Old Zhai scratched his head, almost as if he was asked a hard question. Is this a trick question? I don't know the young master's goals, so there's no way I can answer your question. That said, most disciples aim for promotion since that's the only way to receive more resources from the sect. So, I should aim to become an inner court disciple and eventually a core disciple? Yuan asked, posing what might seem like obvious questions to most. However, he needed to confirm the goal of his trial. That's what most disciples do. Old Zhai nodded. After all, you only have 10 years to become an inner court disciple. If you fail to do so, you'll be forced to leave the sect. However, once you become an inner court disciple, you can stay in the Immortal Monastery forever. I see. Thank you. Yuan said nothing further and quietly returned to his living quarters, his mind occupied with thoughts about his next steps. Now that he had graduated from the bamboo garden and officially become a disciple of the Immortal Monastery, he understood that he would need to climb the ranks like any other disciple, at least for now. Until he found a clear goal or purpose, this was the path he would follow. If I recall correctly, in order to even attempt the inner court examination, I need to reach a certain cultivation and have enough contribution to the sect. In the past, not including one's contribution, an outer court disciple must reach Spirit Master to attempt the inner court examination. So I have a decade to reach Spirit Master, huh? Given my current talents, I definitely won't be able to reach that goal without external help. If he cultivated normally without improving his talent somehow, he would need far more than just a decade to reach Spirit Master. Fortunately, he could use points to speed up his cultivation. However, just increasing the spiritual energy around him wasn't good enough. He needed to somehow improve his talents. Yuan retrieved the rule book and spent the next hour reading every single word. I only get 1 spirit stone a month as an outer court disciple, huh? A single spirit stone will provide me with a week's worth of cultivation, so I will need to somehow acquire more cultivation resources. This is definitely much better than receiving 1 spirit stone every 3 months like before though. Yuan quickly thought of another method of acquiring cultivation resources. Although it was dangerous, it would not only help speed up his cultivation, but it might even increase his points. Before I start, I should prepare myself. Yuan retrieved the Sect's map and quickly located the point store, which was conveniently situated just outside the residential area. Shortly after, he left his living quarters and made his way toward the store. At the store, Yuan began by purchasing a dozen recovery pills. With his immediate needs taken care of, he turned his attention to the rest of the store's inventory, curious about what else he could acquire. Thanks to being the first participant to become a disciple, Yuan now had an additional 10,000 points to spend, giving him far more options than had ever had before. He already had 2 spirit grade swords, and as much as he wanted to upgrade them to earth grade, he lacked the cultivation to wield them. I should focus on my cultivation. Yuan browsed through the list of treasures for improving talent, and to his surprise, there were significantly more items available than what he had seen during his time in the bamboo garden. Golden Spirit Pill? 7,500 points? The Golden Spirit Pill was a valuable pill that could boost one's cultivation talents slightly, and it was the cheapest treasure on that list. I'll buy this. Yuan pointed at the Golden Spirit Pill. The young man working the store nodded and said, "Give me a moment to retrieve your purchase." He disappeared behind the store and returned a few moments later with a pill box in his grasp. "I have deducted 7,500 points from you, ID 913 Outer Court Disciple Xiao Yang." Yuan tossed the pill box inside his spatial ring and immediately left. Upon returning home, Yuan took out the Golden Spirit Pill and without hesitation, tossed it into his mouth. The pill dissolved almost instantly, transforming into a golden liquid that flowed smoothly down his throat. A warm, invigorating sensation spread through his body as the pill's potent energy began to take effect. Once Yuan fully digested the pill, his cultivation went up a level, reaching the 2nd level of Spirit Apprentice. He cultivated normally to test out the pill's result, and sure enough, his cultivation speed had tremendously improved, at least compared to his initial cultivation rate. Although it was far from his goal, it was a start. Chapter 1837 Visiting the Hunting Grounds? Chapter 1837 Visiting the Hunting Grounds. After consuming the Golden Spirit Pill, Yuan wasted no time and left home, making his way to his new training area, the Hunting Grounds, where disciples go to hunt magical beasts. The Hunting Grounds was located about half an hour away from the residential area. While the surroundings were dense with trees and had the appearance of untamed wilderness, Yuan was still very much within the Sect's boundaries. As he reached the entrance of the Hunting Grounds, Yuan was stopped by the Sect elder guarding it. "Hold it right there. You're only a 2nd-level Spirit Apprentice. The weakest magical beast you can find in the Hunting Grounds is at the 5th level. You should come back once you increase your cultivation some more," the Sect elder warned Yuan. "I am aware of my lack of cultivation, but I still wish to enter the Hunting Grounds right now," Yuan said with a stern expression on his face. The Sect elder narrowed his eyes and said, "What's the rush? You look like you became a disciple only very recently. You are almost guaranteed to die if you enter the Hunting Grounds in your current state." "I may not look like it, but I actually have a lot of experience with magical beasts. It'll be fine as long as I am extra careful. If I die, then so be it. It just means I wasn't fated to live long." After a brief silence, the Sect elder stepped aside, his expression tense as he lowered his head without uttering another word. It was as though he was trying to erase Yuan's presence from his mind, pretending that Yuan no longer existed in his world. "Thank you," Yuan said as he walked past the Sect elder and into the Hunting Grounds. As Yuan stepped into the Hunting Grounds, the atmosphere shifted dramatically, almost as if he had crossed into another world. The air was thick with the scent of blood and the presence of wild beasts, an overwhelming mix that assaulted his senses. As he ventured deeper, the growls, roars, and movements of creatures echoed from every direction. Most disciples stepping into the Hunting Grounds for the first time would tremble in fear, their nerves betraying their unease. Even those who managed to suppress their trembling couldn't escape the sinking feeling in their stomachs. Yet, Yuan moved through the terrain with complete tranquility, his face showing no trace of fear or discomfort, as if he were merely enjoying a casual stroll in a park. It didn't take long for Yuan to encounter his first magical beast, a four-legged creature that resembled a pig. However, its appearance was far from ordinary. Its skin was a deep crimson red, and patches of black scales covered its rotund body, giving it an almost armored look. It didn't take long for Yuan to encounter his first magical beast, a four-legged creature that resembled a pig. However, its appearance was far from ordinary. Its skin was a deep crimson red, and patches of black scales covered its rotund body, giving it an almost armored look. Yuan tightened his grip on his spirit-grade sword, his eyes fixed on the magical beast. He remained still and focused, his body poised to react as he patiently waited for the creature to make the first move. The magical beast, which had been eyeing Yuan with caution, suddenly sprang into action. It kicked off its powerful hind legs, propelling itself straight toward him with surprising speed. Yuan, however, remained composed, not rushing to dodge. He waited until the very last moment, when the beast was almost upon him, before sidestepping with precise timing, effortlessly avoiding the creature's charge. Yuan had strategically positioned himself in front of a tree, so when he dodged, the magical beast crashed directly into it. If it had been an ordinary animal, the collision would have undoubtedly left it incapacitated. However, this was no ordinary creature. It was a magical beast with cultivation at the 5th level of Spirit Apprentice. The impact didn't just shake the tree, it completely knocked it down, sending splinters flying as the beast merely suffered a slight daze. Yuan didn't give the beast any chance to recover. Almost simultaneously with his dodge, he swung his sword in a swift, precise arc. The sword struck the magical beast squarely on the neck, but its tough, scaled skin prevented Yuan from decapitating it. The blade bit into the creature but not deeply enough to deal a fatal blow. To Yuan, it felt as if he were back in the bamboo garden trying to chop down the spirit bamboos as a mortal. Realizing it had been struck, the magical beast let out an enraged roar that echoed through the forest. Its fiery eyes locked onto Yuan as it turned and charged at him once more. This time the beast moved with even greater speed. A trail of blood followed in its wake, staining the ground as it barreled toward Yuan with reckless ferocity. Despite the magical beast being 3 levels above his cultivation, Yuan remained completely nonchalant. He didn't feel the slightest hint of threat from the creature. In the end, its attack was exceedingly straightforward, lacking any complexity or strategy. Yuan easily sidestepped the charge with precise timing, making it appear almost effortless, before striking it in the same spot again, deepening its wound. After repeating the same process a few more times, skillfully dodging and delivering precise strikes, the magical beast eventually succumbed to its injuries. Its movements grew sluggish as blood continued to pour from its wounds, and finally, it collapsed onto the ground, unable to move any further, completely drained of strength and life. After confirming the magical beast was dead, Yuan wasted no time and began butchering it with his sword. He skillfully collected its skin, bones, and even its meat, knowing that these parts could be sold for points. He had confirmed this earlier during his visit to the point store. However, Yuan's primary goal in the hunting grounds wasn't farming points, it was hunting for monster cores for his cultivation. Collecting beast parts for points was merely a secondary task to make the most of his efforts while he pursued his true objective. Once he was finished, Yuan continued wandering the hunting grounds for his next prey. Chapter 1838 The second participant to enter the Immortal Monastery. Chapter 1838 The second participant to enter the Immortal Monastery. After defeating his 7th magical beast, Yuan finally acquired his first monster core, and it even belonged to a 6th-level Spirit Apprentice magical beast. Although Yuan had defeated his first magical beast with relative ease, his subsequent encounters were far more challenging. Due to his lack of cultivation and weak body, there were moments when his body failed to keep up with his thoughts, leaving him vulnerable. This caused him to sustain several injuries during the battles. Fortunately, Yuan had prepared well, and his stockpile of recovery pills allowed him to quickly heal his wounds. Upon acquiring his first monster core, Yuan decided it was time to call it a day and return home. Before heading back, however, he stopped by the point store to sell all the materials he had gathered from the magical beasts he had defeated. Each magical beast earned him a little over 100 points, and had earned close to 1,000 points from selling the materials of 7 magical beasts, which would have taken him a week of chopping bamboo. However, while hunting magical beasts definitely earned points faster, it was unfathomably more dangerous. Out of curiosity, he checked the amount of points he could acquire from the monster core. 8,200 points, said the store worker. Although it was a tempting offer, Yuan kept the monster core and returned home with it. Once he was inside his room, he sat in the lotus position and held the monster core in front of him with both hands. This monster core should last me 2 weeks. Yuan muttered to himself as he began absorbing the spiritual energy within the monster core. If Yuan still had his original body and godlike physique, it would have taken him mere seconds to completely absorb the energy from the monster core. Unfortunately, in his current state he had to cultivate like any ordinary cultivator, slowly and methodically drawing out the core's power. Now that Yuan had proper cultivation resources, he no longer needed to spend points to increase the spiritual energy around him, as he was already fully occupied by the monster core. Time flew by as Yuan immersed himself in cultivation. When he finally opened his eyes, 3 days had passed since he last did so. While he made significant progress in his cultivation, he was nowhere near a breakthrough, as Head had won very recently. However, Yuan was not discouraged and resumed his cultivation. While he made significant progress in his cultivation, he was nowhere near a breakthrough, as Head had won very recently. However, Yuan was not discouraged and resumed his cultivation. After another 2 days of cultivation, Yuan was forced to pause when his stomach began growling from hunger. While being a cultivator allowed him to partially sustain himself with spiritual energy, he wasn't yet at a level where he could absorb it quickly enough to fully replace the need for food. As a result, he still experienced hunger, though at a much slower rate than before. As a disciple, Yuan no longer needed to visit the cafeteria for his meals. Instead, he now had the privilege of having food delivered directly to his door, a luxury he genuinely appreciated. After placing an order, it wasn't long before old Zhai arrived at his living quarters, carrying a tray of food. As the aroma of the food wafted through the air, Yuan's anticipation grew. He couldn't wait to dig in, his hunger only intensifying with each passing moment. Just from the scent alone, he could tell that the quality of the meal was on par with, if not better than, the food he had enjoyed in the bamboo garden. "It's been a week, young master. Have you adjusted to life as a disciple yet?" Old Zhai asked as he handed the food to Yuan. "Slowly but surely," Yuan said as he sat down on his doorstep. Without wasting any time, he began eating his food right there, savoring each bite while enjoying the calm atmosphere around him. "That's good to hear. In case you didn't know, another individual from the bamboo garden has recently arrived at the Immortal Monastery." "Oh? Where is this individual staying?" Yuan paused to ask. "He arrived 2 days ago and he's currently staying at Building 111. "I see. Thanks for the information." Yuan quickly finished his meal within minutes. "For future reference, you can just leave your empty plates on your doorsteps outside. Someone will show up to clean it up," old Zhai said to Yuan before carrying his empty plates away. After his meal, Yuan didn't immediately return to his cultivation. Instead, he made his way to Building 111 to see the individual who was recently promoted. Coincidentally, that individual was coming out of his building as Yuan arrived. "I knew it was you, Jiran," Yuan called him out. "Huh? Young master?" A broad and relieved smile appeared on Jiran's face when he saw Yuan's handsome face. "Yes, it's me. How does it feel to have your own body?" Yuan smiled. "Ah. Although it's quite the trash body and only temporary, it's still great to finally have a physical body after spending hundreds of millions of years as a wandering soul," Jiran said with a forced laugh. However, despite his attempt to mask his emotions with humor, Yuan could clearly hear the sorrow and pain laced in his voice. He gazed at his surroundings, his eyes reflecting a mix of nostalgia and gratitude, and continued, "I never thought I'd be able to see this scenery again. It's like a dream come true. This is all thanks to you, young master, for freeing me from the Shadow Realm. Speaking of the Immortal Monastery, what do you think about it? Anything weird or seem out of place?" Yuan then asked. "I've only been here for a few days and I haven't ventured beyond this area yet, so I can't say for certain," Jiran replied. "However, everything seems normal to me. Do you sense something off?" He shook his head and said, "No, this place is just as I remember it." Jiran nodded before asking, "By the way, how long has it been since you arrived at the sect, young master?" Chapter 1839 An Unexpected Encounter. Chapter 1839 An Unexpected Encounter. "It's been a week since I arrived at this place," but I could have arrived 2 weeks earlier. I'm surprised it took you this long to become a cultivator, considering you already memorized the cultivation technique, Yuan said. Ji-Ran scratched his head in an embarrassed manner and admitted, honestly, I was taken aback by life in the bamboo garden and needed some time to adjust. I also failed my first quotas, which slowed me down a little. Although I was the sect leader, I have never actually stepped foot inside the bamboo garden until recently. Ji-Ran was a genius who entered the Immortal Monastery through the entrance examination, so he didn't know what life was like for those who had to enter the sect through the bamboo forest. Although had heard of them before, he never paid any attention to them. After all, those who entered the sect through the bamboo forest were considered trash and not worth his attention. However, after experiencing the bamboo forest himself, Ji-Ran had come to acknowledge, even respect those who had to endure such a life for many years just to become a disciple of the Immortal Monastery. What are your plans now? Yuan asked Ji-Ran a moment later. I am going to focus on my cultivation for now. We only have 10 years to become an inner court disciple, he replied. While it's shorter than the 30 years we're supposed to get, we get more cultivation resources here, so it kind of balances out. What about you, young master? I will focus my cultivation for a little before I turn my focus to acquiring points, said Yuan. Points, huh? Now that you mention it, it might be better to focus on points since it has so many uses, and I can even speed up my cultivation with it, Ji-Ran muttered. However, it's not easy earning points and I don't even know where to begin. You can earn points by selling magical beast materials, especially their cores, Yuan revealed. Wait. There's only one place with magical beasts accessible by outer court disciples. Have you already gone to the hunting grounds? Ji-Ran looked at Yuan with wide eyes. Yuan nodded in acknowledgement. How strong are the magical beasts? Ji-Ran then asked. The weakest magical beast you'll find is at the 5th level of Spirit Apprentice. 5th level? But you've only just become a cultivator recently. Did you somehow retain your original body and talents? Ji-Ran exclaimed with a shocked face. No, but I did purchase a golden spirit pill with my points. 5th level? But you've only just become a cultivator recently. Did you somehow retain your original body and talents? Ji-Ran exclaimed with a shocked face. No, but I did purchase a golden spirit pill with my points. How many points did that cost you? 7,500. That's too expensive. I only have a little over 1,000, Ji-Ran sighed. After chatting for a little longer, Ji-Ran left to visit the point store while Yuan returned home to continue his cultivation. 2 weeks later, Yuan finally finished absorbing all of the spiritual energy from the monster core. However, he was only able to break through a single level, reaching the 3rd level Spirit Apprentice, and he was barely able to do so. Although he still had 5 spirit stones, Yuan decided to save them just in case. Since he had the capability to hunt magical beasts and monster cores, he wasn't desperate for cultivation resources. After taking a shower and filling his stomach, Yuan headed back to the hunting grounds for another hunting session. As he approached the entrance, his eyes fell on someone exiting the area. It was Ji-Ran, and his appearance was nothing short of pitiful. His clothes were tattered and roughed up, and his body was smeared with blood, giving the impression that he had been through a brutal ordeal. Why, young master? Ji-Ran almost instinctively hid his face after encountering Yuan. You don't look so good, Yuan teased with a smile. He sighed. I thought I would be able to hunt magical beasts since you were able to do it. However, even with my experience, there's no point if my body doesn't listen to me. I will need to temper my body before I can even think about returning to this place. Good luck, young master. Not wanting to linger with his appearance, Ji-Ran hastily left the scene. Yuan entered the hunting grounds shortly after. The sect elder watching the entrance noticed him but didn't say anything. Once inside the hunting grounds, Yuan wasted no time looking for magical beasts. However, even though he was confident in his abilities, there were certain magical beasts that he actively avoided, especially the agile ones. Oh, to find a monster core this quickly, how lucky, Yuan muttered to himself after getting a monster core on his first kill. After gathering the materials, Yuan continued his hunt. This time he was prepared to stay inside the hunting grounds until his spatial ring could no longer store any more materials. A week later, after averaging 10 to 15 kills a day, Yuan finally filled his spatial ring to capacity with magical beast materials. Just as he was preparing to head back to the sect, he sensed a presence approaching him. The individual made no attempt to conceal their presence, which kept Yuan from feeling overly alarmed. However, his cautious nature kept him on alert, ready to react if necessary. Hey, what the hell are you doing? a feminine voice rang out. Yuan turned around to face the source of the voice and saw a beautiful young woman approaching him. When he saw her face, his eyes widened with surprise. Meanwhile, the young woman frowned deeply upon seeing Yuan. "I knew it," she said, her tone sharp but laced with confusion. "I thought I was seeing things, but it really is you. What are you doing wearing the outer court's uniform? And why are you still in the sect? I thought you had already left to prepare for your core disciple examination long ago." "Chem? Disciple Tianyang? Elder's son?" Yuan muttered her name subconsciously, his voice filled with disbelief. This young woman wasn't just any sect member. She was Elder's son, a sect elder and someone Tianyang was deeply familiar with, as she had saved his life on multiple occasions in the past. Chapter 1840 Not Tianyang? Chapter 1840 Not Tianyang? Why aren't you answering my questions, Disciple Tian? Why are you still at the sect when you should have left long ago? And pretending to be an outer court disciple, no less. Elder Son asked again when Yuan didn't respond. I think you have the wrong person, Yuan eventually responded. The frown on Elder Son's face deepened after hearing his response, and she quickly said, "What kind of nonsense are you up to now, Disciple Tian? If you're going to pretend to be someone else, you should, at the very least, change your face." "I don't know who this Disciple Tian is, but my name is Xiao Yang, and I entered the Immortal Monastery not long ago," Yuan said. He had contemplated pretending to be Tianyang for a brief moment but decided against it in the end due to a gut feeling. "Do you think I am stupid or something?" Elder Son said, still not believing Yuan. "You can look me up. I came from the bamboo garden not long ago," Yuan shrugged. Elder Son fell silent with a perplexed expression on her face. "Then how do you know my name?" "If you're not Disciple Tian, this should be our first time meeting," she said a moment later, referring to when Yuan subconsciously muttered her name out of surprise. "I heard about you from someone else. They mentioned a beautiful sect elder protecting disciples at the hunting grounds and that I might run into you when I come here." Yuan quickly came up with an excuse. Elder Son coldly snorted at his words, but she didn't say anything else. After a moment of silence she said, "Whatever. It's easy to confirm your words. I will give you one last chance to come clean. If it turns out that you're messing with me, I am going to give you a good beating." "I wouldn't dare to mess with a sect elder," Yuan shook his head. Elder Son disappeared the next moment, leaving Yuan speechless. "So Tianyang was a disciple at the Immortal Monastery during its earliest days, huh? I didn't think someone would recognize me." Yuan was truly shocked that Elder Son was there and even recognized him as Tianyang, as this had many implications. She mentioned the core disciple examination, which means Tianyang should be at the desolate continent right now. However, since Elder Son is still at the Immortal Monastery, then that incident has yet to happen. Yuan recalled meeting Elder Son at the desolate continent, so if she was still in the sect, it meant that Han Zexian's tomb had yet to open. Maybe I'm overthinking. This is a trial created by the Immortal Monastery's founder. It isn't too far-fetched to think the founder had recreated the people of his era with their memories intact to make the trial more realistic. Yuan shook his head and decided not to think too much about it. He left the hunting grounds shortly after and made his way to the point store to sell his materials. Meanwhile, Elder Son went to inquire about Yuan. He was telling the truth. "Xiao Yang?" Elder Son mumbled to herself, her voice barely audible as she stood frozen in place, her expression dazed. Why does he look exactly like Tianyang? Despite the evidence urging her to believe that Yuan was someone else entirely and only looked like Tianyang, she couldn't ignore the familiar feeling she got from him. Why does he feel so familiar if he's someone different? Even his demeanor was identical to Tianyang. No, his eyes looked much more experienced, but everything else is just like Tianyang. Damn it, why am I overthinking this? If he claims he's not Tianyang, then he's not Tianyang. Elder Son eventually convinced herself that Yuan was a different person. Meanwhile, at the point shop, Yuan sold all of the materials had gathered from the 91 magical beasts he hunted in a week and earned a little over 11,000 points. He also acquired 6 monster cores from the hunt, but he had no intentions to sell them. 6 monster cores will last me 3 months. I should also reach the 6th level by the end. Instead of spending his points, Yuan decided to save them for the next talent-boosting treasure, which cost a staggering 50,000 points. After returning home, Yuan made the decision to dedicate himself entirely to cultivation. For the next month he would not leave his home, only opening his doors once a week to receive food from old Zhai. During this time, more and more participants would graduate from the bamboo garden and enter the Immortal Monastery. Lan Yingying was one of these individuals. If it isn't Lady Lan, are you looking for the young master? Ji Ran coincidentally ran into Lan Yingying, who was wandering the residential area looking for Yuan. Unlike the bamboo garden, both males and females lived in the same area. I am. Do you know where he's staying? He's staying at Building 913. However, he's currently in seclusion, said Ji Ran, recalling what Yuan told him before entering seclusion. That said, you can probably still see him since he has to eat once a week. Lan Yingying nodded. Okay, I'll wait for him. Since Lan Yingying was one of the earlier participants to arrive at the Immortal Monastery, she was able to pick the building next to Yuan as her living quarters. A few days later, she noticed old Zhai approaching Yuan's living quarters with several plates of food. Seeing this, she hurriedly rushed outside and waited for Yuan to grab the food. Sure enough, when Yuan opened the door for the food, he noticed Lan Yingying standing outside his building. He smiled after seeing her and said, "I'm glad you made it out of the bamboo garden safely. Did anything happen while I was gone?" Those participants who had been hiding in their homes to avoid you finally came out. Other than that, not really, she said. Chapter 1841 50,000 points. Chapter 1841 50,000 points. What about the two divine beasts in your group? Did they also arrive at the Immortal Monastery? Yuan then asked. No, they're still trying to become a cultivator. It will probably take another month or two before they will arrive, Lan Yingying said. Yuan only paid for Lan Yingying's privilege of having increased spiritual energy, so it was only natural that she progressed faster than the others. Now that I am at the Immortal Monastery, what should I do? What is our goal in this trial? Lan Yingying then inquired. Honestly, I have no clue what our true goal is for this trial, but I am going to climb the ranks and become an inner court disciple for now since we only have 10 years to do so. What are the requirements for becoming an inner court disciple? You have to reach Spirit Master and earn enough contributions to the sect by doing sect missions. I see. Do you have any suggestion on what I should do as a disciple? This is my first time being one. Lan Yingying then asked. I would focus on my cultivation if I were you since the hunting grounds is too dangerous for you right now. Once you're able to hunt in the hunting grounds, you should focus on increasing your points to purchase talent-boosting treasures, such as the Golden Spirit Pill. I understand, Lan Yingying nodded. Lan Yingying returned to her living quarters to focus on her cultivation while Yuan returned to his own training. 2 months later, Yuan finished absorbing all 6 monster cores, boosting his cultivation to the 6th level of Spirit Apprentice. Before heading to the hunting grounds, Yuan visited the point store to replenish his supplies. At the hunting grounds, Yuan wasted no time hunting magical beasts. Now that he was at the 6th level, he could deal damage with less effort, allowing him to hunt much faster. And being watched, Yuan thought to himself. He could feel a presence observing him from the shadows, but he didn't detect any ill intent behind the gaze. It must be Elder Sunday. He had a feeling that she was still having trouble believing that he wasn't Tian, not that he blamed her. Meanwhile, just as Yuan guessed, Elder Sun was watching him from afar. The Xiaoyang. He's slaughtering magical beasts with no effort, and it's not because of his cultivation. I don't know any disciple that's half as experienced as him in combat, and this includes the sect elders. Elder Sun was greatly shocked and awed by Yuan's combat experience. What little doubt Elder Sun had about Yuan's identity completely vanished after witnessing his combat prowess, as it was unfathomably higher than Tianyang. Why would a genius like him enter the sect through the bamboo garden? With his talents, he should have no issue passing the entrance exam. Over the next several days, Elder Sun would follow Yuan around the hunting grounds to get a better understanding of his talents. After spending 4 days inside the hunting grounds, Yuan had to leave to sell his materials since his spatial ring was full. It took him an entire week to fill his spatial ring before, but it only took him 4 days this time. Upon selling everything in his spatial ring, Yuan earned a little under 13,000 points. It was a little higher than last time since the magical beasts he hunted were stronger than before. I have a little over 25,000 points at this time, so I am halfway to the next treasure. Yuan decided to purchase a few more spatial rings since they were quite cheap, and it would allow him to stay inside the hunting grounds for longer. Once he purchased his spatial rings and resupplied, Yuan returned to the hunting grounds and wouldn't leave until he acquired enough materials to purchase the treasure worth 50,000 points, which would take about 10 days. He's back already? Does he even know what it means to take a break? He's just like Tian in this regard. Elder Sun couldn't believe her eyes when she noticed Yuan returning to the hunting grounds so soon. However, as much as she wanted to continue watching over him, Elder Sun knew she couldn't babysit a single disciple for too long, especially knowing that Yuan was more than capable of protecting himself inside the hunting grounds. After taking another glance at Yuan's face, Elder Sun left to watch over the other disciples inside the hunting grounds. Meanwhile, Yuan spent the next 10 days hunting magical beasts without rest. During this time he hunted over 300 magical beasts and collected 21 monster cores, 28 if he included the ones he collected before purchasing more spatial rings. After leaving the hunting grounds, Yuan went straight to the point store to sell the materials, earning more than he anticipated, 36,000 points. Then he immediately spent 50,000 points buying the talent-boosting treasure called Enriched Roots of Vigor, a treasure that boosted his innate strength and widened his spiritual veins, allowing him to absorb and circulate spiritual energy faster with less effort. After purchasing the treasure, Yuan promptly made his way back home, eager to consume it. However, he didn't get far from the point store before a group of disciples stepped into his path, blocking his way. "How can I help you?" Yuan asked them, who didn't appear to be participants like him. "You can help us by handing over whatever you received from that building just now," said the disciple in the front. Yuan was speechless. He didn't anticipate that the disciples would attempt to rob him so openly. "You're just a bastard from the bamboo garden. You're not worthy of that enriched roots of vigor. It'd only be a waste on you." "And what if I refuse? Are you going to attack me?" Yuan said a moment later. "Who knows? You can refuse and find out, but I would advise against that," said the disciple with a menacing grin on his face. Chapter 1842 Enriched Roots of Vigor. Chapter 1842 Enriched Roots of Vigor. The three disciples blocking Yuan's path stood with their chests high, looking quite proud of their tactics. Yuan didn't immediately respond to their threat and silently analyzed them. 1st level Spirit Warrior, 8th level Spirit Apprentice and 7th level Spirit Apprentice, huh? All of them had a higher cultivation than Yuan, and one of them was even a Spirit Warrior. If Yuan had his original body, he wouldn't need to worry about fighting those above his cultivation. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Even if Yuan's fighting experience was far superior to the three of them combined, the three disciples could easily overpower him with raw strength alone. Moreover, Yuan lacked not just cultivation but also martial techniques and treasures. After contemplating his choices for a moment, Yuan suddenly turned around and began walking back to the point store, which left the disciples puzzled. Wait. Where the hell do you think you're going? How dare you ignore us? Come back here." The disciples shouted for him to return, but Yuan simply ignored them. Upon returning to the store, Yuan faced the disciples and said, "You want what I have? Come get it." The disciples trembled in anger after hearing his words, but for some reason they refused to chase after Yuan, almost as if there was an invisible barrier that prevented them from getting close to the point store. So those who are not participants are not allowed inside the point store, huh? This is good to know. Yuan had planned on consuming the treasure inside the store, where there were others watching, making it difficult for the disciples to intervene. He never expected that only participants and those who were designed to work at the point store would be allowed to enter. Upon realizing this, Yuan immediately sat down and retrieved the enriched roots of vigor. Before consuming it, he dangled it in front of him like he was trying to bait something. "You fucking bastard. Don't you dare. I swear I'll fucking kill you later. Don't think you can stay there forever." When the three disciples saw Yuan's actions, they became infuriated, their faces flushed with redness. However, no matter how red their faces turned, their feet remained rooted to the ground, unable to take a step closer to the point store. Once Yuan confirmed that they were definitely unable to approach the point store, Yuan consumed the enriched roots of vigor and began cultivating with the disciples as spectators. The young man working behind the desk inside the store noticed Yuan's actions but didn't say anything. After a glance, he returned to his own business and pretended as if Yuan wasn't even there. Over the next several days, Yuan remained at the point store, trying to absorb the enriched roots of vigor. Instead, he began looking for something more affordable and would offer immediate benefits to his cultivation or abilities. Eventually he came across a certain pill, one that would immediately push his cultivation straight into the next realm. I will buy a Spirit Warrior advancement pill, Yuan said. That will be 10,000 points, said the store clerk. Although the participants were prohibited from using martial techniques that did not originate from the Immortal Monastery, they had no problem learning the sect's martial techniques. The only issue was that it was nearly impossible for the participants to acquire these techniques in their current state. Yuan and the participants confirmed that they were able to purchase the Immortal Monastery's techniques with points after arriving at the Immortal Monastery. However, even the basic ones required tens of thousands of points, which was simply not feasible for the majority of the participants. As for Yuan, he didn't need to spend any points on purchasing these techniques because he already had memorized several of them. The only reason he hasn't tried to use them was due to a lack of cultivation. Now that he reached Spirit Warrior, he could start using them properly. Yuan made his way to the training grounds, a spacious outdoor area specifically used by disciples for training martial techniques. When Yuan arrived, there were dozens of disciples already training. At a glance, he observed a diverse array of techniques being practiced. Some focused on swordsmanship, others on hand-to-hand combat or even niche weapons like sickles and fans. The variety of methods on display made it seem that the Immortal Monastery didn't adhere to a single teaching style like most sections. Instead, it seemed to encourage disciples to cultivate and hone techniques that suited their individual strengths and preferences, fostering a more versatile and adaptive environment. However, Yuan knew the truth behind this apparent freedom. While it was true that the Immortal Monastery didn't enforce a specific style, this wasn't due to a philosophy of allowing disciples to choose their paths freely. Instead, it was because of the sect's unique cultivation techniques, which were designed to enhance and complement all styles equally. This adaptability was the sect's greatest strength. It didn't matter what techniques or fighting styles the disciples practiced. The Immortal Monastery's methods ensured that every approach could reach its full potential, creating a foundation that benefited all who trained within its walls. The Immortal Monastery was renowned for one defining feature: its technique-amplifying techniques. If one observed the training grounds closely, they would notice a faint red and black aura emanating from every disciple's weapon. This distinct aura was the result of the sect's core cultivation method, the Peerless Immortal technique, a mythical technique unique to the Immortal Monastery. This technique was the cornerstone of the sect's reputation, enhancing the effectiveness of any technique. It allowed disciples to push all of their abilities to unimaginable levels, making even the most basic techniques formidable in combat. The Peerless Immortal technique. While it has an impressive name, it's a relatively simple technique that basically amplifies the strength of all techniques. What truly differentiates the Peerless Immortal technique from other strengthening techniques is its diversity and its seemingly endless potential. Yuan recalled Tian Yang's knowledge of the technique. Typically, when a cultivator masters a specific weapon or technique, learning another would require them to start from scratch. However, the Peerless Immortal technique completely bypassed this limitation. With this unique technique, a cultivator could effortlessly switch weapons or techniques without any loss of strength, allowing one to display prowess that would only be possible when the technique is fully mastered, even with the most basic understanding. That said, the technique is not perfect and has its own drawbacks. The Peerless Immortal technique was incredibly difficult to learn and even harder to master. In fact, most disciples spend their entire lives stuck at the basic levels of the technique, unable to advance further. Chapter 1844 Peerless Immortal Technique. Chapter 1844 Peerless Immortal Technique. The Peerless Immortal Technique was comprised of 9 known levels, with the first 2 levels considered the foundational basics. Although most disciples only ever managed to reach level 2, even at this stage they were able to display a level of prowess that far surpassed that of other cultivators with the same cultivation level. This is why, despite the difficulty, the Immortal Monastery remained a top sect during the primordial era. Yuan retrieved one of his swords from his spatial ring and made his way to an empty spot in the training grounds. With plenty of space around him, he could practice without worrying about disturbing the others. While the Peerless Immortal technique is the Immortal Monastery's main technique, they also have other techniques that, while not as versatile, are still incredibly powerful, Yuan thought to himself, considering his options. The Peerless Immortal technique was designed to amplify and enhance other techniques, meaning it required a foundational technique to pair with. Without one, practicing it would be meaningless. Yuan closed his eyes and focused, delving deep into Tian Yang's memories to recall the techniques he had once practiced. Once the memories surfaced, Yuan began training. The first technique was called Thousand-Mile Sword Strike, a straightforward yet powerful sword art. With a precise swing of the sword, it unleashed a sharp arc of spiritual energy, cutting through the air and striking targets from a distance. Standing on the training grounds, Yuan raised his sword, channeling his spiritual energy as he practiced the technique. He swung the blade, and a faint arc of energy shot forward, dissipating shortly after. It wasn't perfect, but with each repetition, his movements grew sharper, and the spiritual energy more concentrated. Several hours later, once Yuan was satisfied with the speed and distance, he began training the Peerless Immortal technique. Once activated, Yuan's sword became engulfed in an ominous red and black aura. The next time he used the Thousand-Mile Sword Strike, it flew 2 times faster and further than before while only using about 50% more spiritual energy than he usually would. With my cultivation, he'll only be able to use the Peerless Immortal technique up to the first level, but this is already powerful enough. Yuan continued training until he was satisfied. As Yuan concluded his training session and prepared to leave, he caught sight of 3 individuals approaching him from a distance. Their hurried pace and the unmistakable killing intent in their gazes left no doubt about their hostile intentions. These 3 disciples were the same ones who tried to rob his enriched roots of vigor. Despite having plenty of time to run away, Yuan remained still, patiently waiting for them to reach him. The 3 disciples thought he was frozen from fear, causing smiles to appear on their faces. "Did you really think we'd forget about what happened last time, you bamboo bastard?" the spirit warrior snarled, his voice dripping with anger. His face turned red, both from the effort of suppressing his rage and the humiliation that resurfaced as he recalled their previous encounter. "Of course not. In fact, I was hoping you'd return," Yuan said. He faced them with a calm expression and continued, "So, what are you going to do about it?" "How dare!" The spirit warrior's voice halted as he noticed Yuan's cultivation. "Why you? How are you already a spirit warrior? You were only at the 6th level of spirit apprentice the last time we spoke." In the time it had taken Yuan to advance from the 6th level of spirit apprentice to spirit warrior, none of the 3 disciples had made any progress in their cultivation. This realization didn't just shock the 3 disciples, it terrified them. The speed of Yuan's advancement was far beyond anything they had seen or heard of before, and the thought that they might have offended a genius sent chills down their spines. Their anger and confidence began to waver, replaced by a creeping sense of dread as they considered the possibility of offending someone they shouldn't have. Noticing the fear in their eyes, Yuan smiled and said, "Is there something weird about me being a spirit warrior?" He raised his sword and activated the Peerless Immortal technique before pressing its blade against the spirit warrior's neck. "I want to kill the 3 of you right now, but I am a rule-abiding disciple. However, if I see any of you outside the sect, especially the hunting grounds, I won't give any warnings and swing my sword." The disciples trembled in fear. However, it was not Yuan's threat that terrified them, it was his usage of the Peerless Immortal technique. Despite being at the sect for over half a decade, neither of them had managed to reach the 1st level of the technique. Yet, despite having just become a spirit warrior, Yuan was already demonstrating a mastery of the technique that seemed superior to even that of inner court disciples. "I will give you 5 seconds to get out of my sight before I start swinging my sword. Why you wouldn't dare to kill another disciple in the sect? This is the training grounds. Accidents happen here every once in a while. I can just say that I was too absorbed in my training to notice you and accidentally killed you," Yuan shrugged. The moment the disciples sensed the cold, suffocating wave of killing intent emanating from Yuan, their courage evaporated in an instant. Without a second thought, they turned and bolted, fleeing as fast as their legs could carry them. Once those 3 disciples left, Yuan made his way to the hunting grounds. At the hunting grounds, Yuan ignored the weaker magical beasts and went straight to the area with powerful magical beasts at the spirit warrior level. Magical beasts are inherently stronger than human cultivators at the same level, so it was common to see disciples work together to hunt a single magical beast. However, Yuan traversed the place alone, killing magical beasts left and right with the Thousand-Mile Sword Strike and Peerless Immortal technique, quickly filling his spatial ring with materials. Chapter 1845 A Rumor? Chapter 1845 A Rumor? Senior sister son, have you heard? There's a monster hunting all of the magical beasts in the hunting grounds. A female sect elder approached Elder Sun while she was patrolling the outer areas of the hunting grounds. Huh? Monster? What are you talking about? Elder Sun raised an eyebrow at this news. There's a rumor going around saying that an outer court disciple is hunting spirit warrior magical beasts alone and at an incredible rate. I don't know how credible this information is, but according to the sect elder who witnessed it, this outer court disciple could utilize the Peerless Immortal technique even better than many inner court disciples. An outer court disciple doing better than inner court disciples with the Peerless Immortal technique? When did our sect acquire such a genius? Elder Sun asked with raised eyebrows. Who knows? We don't even know if this person really exists. Why don't you go take a look and confirm it yourself? Elder Sun asked. That's what I plan on doing. Want to come with me? I would love to, but I don't want to give the sect leader any reasons to lecture me, Elder Sun sighed out loud. All right. You were lectured for paying too much attention to a certain disciple a few years ago. What happened to him? He's on his way to becoming a core disciple. He left the sect some time ago to train. A core disciple? I guess there's a reason you were paying so much attention to him. Everyone thought you had fallen for a disciple back then. Do you have any idea how shocked we were? That's absolute nonsense. He's akin to a little brother to me, one who is always in trouble and requires my help. He would have died long ago if it weren't for me, Elder Sun shook her head. Although her words may sound a little egotistical, it was very true. Tian would have died long ago if it weren't for her constant support, not to mention the amount of time she had to save him in the hunting grounds. Whatever you say, senior sister. Anyway, I'll go check out this monster and report back to you once I confirm or expose the rumors. With that, the female sect elder left Elder Sun and went deeper into the hunting grounds. At the same time, Yuan was just leaving the hunting grounds after filling his spatial ring with materials. A single magical beast earned him around 100 points before, but now they were earning him around 500 points. As for the monster cores, they would also earn him 5 times more than previously if he sold them. Of course, he only sold the materials and kept the monster cores. However, while the magical beasts earned him more points, they were harder to encounter. In the end, it took Yuan almost a week to fill his spatial ring when it used to only take 3 to 4 days. Still, the amount of points he was earning was still much more than before. In a week, he had earned around 55,000 points. At this rate, he'll need to farm magical beasts for 3 months straight before I can afford the next treasure. Although it was a long time, Yuan didn't mind it as it was almost a drop in the bucket when compared to Tian, who had spent years training inside the hunting grounds. I'd like to purchase an earth-grade sword, Yuan said to the young store clerk. That would cost 5,000 points. It was 1,000 times more expensive than the spirit-grade sword Yuan had purchased. He'll take it, Yuan said. Although Yuan wouldn't have minded continuing to use his spirit-grade swords, they were beginning to show visible signs of wear and tear. The immense stress placed on them by the Peerless Immortal technique had pushed them to their limits, and cracks were starting to form. It was clear they wouldn't last much longer under such strain. After acquiring the earth-grade sword, Yuan returned to the hunting grounds to continue his grind. Oh, is that him? The sect elder who went to confirm the rumors finally found Yuan after searching for an entire day. She then watched as Yuan killed a magical beast from afar using the 1,000-mile sword strike, which had been strengthened by the Peerless Immortal technique. Heavens! He killed it with a single strike. And his Peerless Immortal technique is almost level 2. Only the top inner court disciples have reached that level after decades of hard work. The sect elder almost couldn't believe her eyes. After watching Yuan for a few hours, the sect elder approached him and asked, "Disciple, what is your name?" "My name is Xiaoyang," Yuan introduced himself. "Xiaoyang, huh? How long have you been a disciple?" "A few months." "Only a few months? And you're already a spirit warrior? Not to mention your understanding of the Peerless Immortal technique. Did you, by any chance, come from the Immortal clans?" "No, I have no relations to the Immortal clans." Yuan's eyebrows twitched after hearing about the Immortal clans. "Then do you have a master?" Although only inner court disciples are allowed to have a master, exceptionally talented individuals are exempted from this rule. "No, I don't have a master," Yuan shook his head. A disciple may accept a sect elder as master once they are promoted to the inner court. This had several benefits, such as learning techniques that most disciples do not have access to, as well as receiving much more cultivation resources than others. "No, I don't have a master, nor do I have any intentions of accepting one." Yuan shook his head. "Why not?" You'd grow stronger much faster if you had one. You would also receive special protection from the sect. The sect elder was puzzled, even surprised by Yuan's response, as most disciples would kill for a master. I don't know, Yuan shrugged. How about I be your master? You use the sword, right? Well, I happen to be a sword master, the sect elder revealed with a puffed chest. My little brother creator's thought. Chapter 1846 Soul Refining Elixir. Chapter 1846 Soul Refining Elixir. Sorry, senior, but if I had a master, I would prefer it be someone I am familiar with. Yuan shook his head. That's a simple fix. We can just get to know each other better. The sect elder appeared noticeably eager, even a little desperate, to recruit Yuan as her disciple. This was because having a highly talented disciple would significantly enhance her reputation and status within the sect. A disciple's achievements reflected directly on their master, and if Yuan were to accomplish something extraordinary for the sect, it could lead to promotions and increased prestige for the elder. For her, recruiting someone with Yuan's potential was not just about guidance, it was an opportunity to elevate her own standing. Thank you for the offer, senior, but for personal reasons I won't be accepting a master for now, Yuan refused. The sect elder sighed, clearly disappointed in his response. However, she wasn't ready to give up a talented disciple like him and said, I am Elder Jing. My offer remains, so if you ever change your mind in the future, you can find me. Thank you, senior. I will definitely keep your offer in mind, Yuan responded politely. Despite saying that, Yuan had no intentions of accepting her as his master. In fact, he already had someone else in mind. Elder Jing left shortly after and returned to Elder Sun's side to report her findings. The rumors were true. This outer court disciple exists. I watched him slay spirit warrior magical beasts as if they were just ordinary animals. I have never seen anyone like him before. Not only that, he's also very talented with the sword. His movements were swift and precise with zero waste. Hell, he might even be better than me in terms of basic sword understanding. Elder Jing praised Yuan endlessly, leaving Elder Sun speechless. Such a talented disciple, I wonder if he's already accepted a master. He doesn't have a master yet. Honestly, I tried to recruit him but he refused, Elder Jing sighed. Did he say why? He only said it was due to some personal reasons. I see. Speaking of accepting a disciple, I'm surprised you didn't try to recruit that brother-like disciple of yours, Elder Jing suddenly said. It's complicated, Elder Sun shook her head, refusing to elaborate further. Time continued to flow, and before Yuan realized it, a whole month had passed since his breakthrough to Spirit Warrior. He decided to take a break from the hunting grounds to check up on the others. Ji Ran had just achieved the 5th level of Spirit Apprentice, while Lan Yingying was on the verge of entering the 3rd level. Have you seen Mei Li, Yingzi, or the Zither Goddess? Yuan asked Ji Ran and Lan Yingying. They both shook their heads. Since they're beasts like me, they might be a little slower, especially Yingzi, who only started cultivating recently, Lan Yingying said. Chapter 1847 Sudden Event. Chapter 1847 Sudden Event. When Yuan emerged from his seclusion, he was pleasantly surprised to learn that Mei Li and Tan Songyun had finally arrived at the Immortal Monastery. So the only one left is Yingzi, huh? If Yuan had to be honest, he was the most worried about Yingzi, as she was new to cultivation in the 9 heavens. Moreover, she isn't even familiar with humans, much less their lifestyles. Yuan could imagine Yingzi having a hard time adapting to the quotas in the bamboo garden. I must ask, how many points do you currently have? Mei Li asked Yuan as they sat in his room. Near 0 since I just spent all of them, Yuan said. However, I had 750,000 points before that. 750,000? Everyone in the room exclaimed in shock. The rest of the participants had just begun entering the hunting grounds to farm for points, yet Yuan had already earned and spent 750,000 in one go. It was an astronomical amount of points that they couldn't even begin to comprehend. How in heaven's name did you earn that many points? Did you threaten someone for them? Tan Songyun asked with wide eyes. You can get points by selling materials of magical beasts to the point store. You get about 100 per kill as Spirit Apprentice. Once you reach Spirit Warrior, you can expect around 500 per kill, Yuan explained his methods. However, even if everyone knew his method, not everyone could replicate it. After all, most participants have to pair up to fight a single magical beast, and they'd need to split the points. Yuan was fighting alone, so he could easily keep all points for himself. By the way, here's a little something. Yuan retrieved 4 golden spirit pills from his spatial ring and continued, "These will make your life a little easier." "What is that?" she merely asked. "That's the golden spirit pill. Although not by much, it can boost one's cultivation talents," Jiran explained. "Oh, I saw that in the list. They cost 7,500 points each, right? Are you sure you want to spend so many points on us?" "I don't want to slow down your progress," she merely said. Yuan smiled and said, "It's only 7,500 points. I can earn that much with a single monster core and some materials. I'll hardly slow down my progress right now." Jiran then said, "I appreciate the offer, young master, but I have already purchased and consumed the golden spirit pill myself. You can save mine for Ingzi." In the Immortal Monastery, Jiran's progress was only second to Yuan, which was expected, as he was once the sect leader of the Immortal Monastery. Shimeli and Lan Yingying accepted the golden spirit pill. As for Tan Songyun, she hesitated to receive Yuan's assistance out of pride. However, she eventually accepted the golden spirit pill. "Thank you," she mumbled. Sometime later, everyone left Yuan's living quarters to continue their training. As for Yuan, he returned to the hunting grounds to continue slaying magical beasts for points. However, there are still over 2 entire years for her to arrive at the sect, she merely said. Everyone was given 4 years to get out of the bamboo garden, and only a year and a few months have passed since the trials began, so there was still plenty of time for the participants to arrive at the Immortal Monastery. "There's no point worrying about it since we can't do anything about it but hope for the best," Yuan said. "Anyway, how did you guys spend the last half a year?" Yuan asked them. He noticed that Lan Yingying was at the 9th level of Spirit Apprentice while Shimeli was at the 7th level. Ji Ran had already become a Spirit Warrior, even reaching the 2nd level. "We spent half of that time cultivating the monster cores you gave us and the other half inside the hunting grounds for points. Since we're a 3-man group, we needed to collect 75,000 points," Lan Yingying said. "3-man? You hunted with them?" Yuan looked at Ji Ran with raised eyebrows. He was sure that Ji Ran was going to do things alone. "It's not me," Jiran shook his head. "We went hunting with Sister Songyun," said Shimeli. "Sister? Since when have you gotten so close?" Yuan's eyes widened with surprise. He also anticipated Tan Songyun would be hunting with her fellow faction members, but that didn't seem to be the case. "Where is she right now?" Yuan then asked. "Cultivating inside her room." "I see. By the way, did the 2 of you study the technique I recommended to you before?" Yuan asked a moment later. "The Peerless Immortal technique?" "Yes, we went to the library to acquire the technique right afterward. However, it's a very difficult technique. I am barely scratching the surface even after having it for half a year. That said, I only spend a little time studying it every day. I'll spend more time on it after the tournament," Shimeli said. Every disciple of the Immortal Monastery is granted the privilege of learning the Peerless Immortal technique for free, so Lan Yingying and Shimeli were able to acquire it without any issues or spending points. Moreover, unlike the cultivation technique, they were unable to spend points speeding up their memorization progress. Fortunately, the founder did not alter the Peerless Immortal technique in any way, allowing everyone to study it without any artificial difficulty. However, even without altering its difficulty, the Peerless Immortal technique would still challenge the geniuses and experienced cultivators doing the trial. That said, since there were no guidelines or instructions that recommended the participants to learn the technique, it was unknown how many participants actually picked up the Peerless Immortal technique to study. "It's a difficult technique, but it'll be worth it. Trust me," Yuan said. He then looked at Jiran and asked, "Just wondering, but what level of the technique did you reach?" Jiran quickly said, "I reached the 6th level before being imprisoned in the Shadow Realm. It hasn't advanced since then for obvious reasons." Chapter 1850 Entry Level Immortal Tournament. Chapter 1850 Entry Level Immortal Tournament, 6th level, huh? That's not bad considering there are only 9 levels to the technique, Yuan muttered after hearing Ji-Ran's response. Not bad. Ji-Ran raised his eyebrows and said, Young master, although there are 9 levels, only the founder has ever managed to reach that level. The highest level achieved by someone other than the founder is only the 7th level, which was achieved by the sect leader before I took his position. What about you, young master? What level did you achieve in your past life? Yuan shrugged and calmly replied, I have no clue. I only have memories of learning up to the 3rd level. I don't have all of my memories of that incarnation. The 3rd level, huh? Only the top inner court disciple would reach that level when I was still the sect leader, Ji-Ran mumbled. That is also the requirement to qualify as a core disciple. Anyway, I'm going to get some sleep. It's been a while. I'll see you all tomorrow at the tournament, Yuan said to them before returning home and instantly falling asleep the moment he lay on the bed. The following day, Yuan and the other participants made their way to the only arena available in the outer court. However, when they arrived, they noticed that the real disciples were also there. This made them wonder if these disciples were just there to spectate or to participate in the tournament as well. Do you think they'll be participating as well? I hope not. Because if they are, we're all screwed. Right? There's no way we could compete with them with our trash bodies and talents. The participants mumbled amongst themselves as they entered the arena and sat down in the empty seats. Although the arena was massive, with tens of thousands of seats available, it quickly filled up with disciples. There was also a small but luxurious section for sect elders and disciples from the inner court. Once the seats were filled, a tall and handsome figure descended from the sky, landing directly on the stage in the center of the arena. When the sect elders and the real disciples saw this figure, they immediately stood up and lowered their heads before greeting in unison, We greet the sect leader. Ji-Ran was also standing, but it was not because he recognized the handsome man's face. Instead, he recognized the handsome man's robes, something he also wore before. Realizing that they were before the sect leader of the Immortal Monastery, the participants also hastily stood up and silently bowed. At the same time, they wondered if this sect leader was the founder, the same individual who spoke to them before the Immortal Monastery's opening. I will keep things brief. The rules are as follows. Once the sect leader spoke, the participants no longer doubted his identity, as he sounded exactly like the voice from the Immortal Gates. First and foremost, killing is not allowed. Chapter 1851 Limited Stock. Chapter 1851 Limited Stock. What? There's a stock limit to the items in the point store? Yuan was genuinely surprised to learn about this information. All of the spirit-grade swords have been sold out for some time now. Luckily, we all managed to purchase one, Lan Ying added. I purchased a spirit-grade spear, and they are still in stock due to low demand, Shi Meili added. Swords were the most popular and widely used weapon, so it wasn't shocking for them to run out of stock so quickly. What about treasures? Yuan then asked. Well, the golden spirit pill is sold out. The enriched roots of Vigor and soul refining elixir are still available. As for the rest, nobody even bothered asking about them since they're way out of our league. I see. I should buy as many as I can before they run out of stock then. Yuan mumbled to himself. Even though the treasures would only work once for each individual, he wanted to secure the most powerful treasures for his own people. The sect leader continued speaking. Once the tournament begins, the fighters' numbers will be called. Those who have been called will be given 10 seconds to enter the stage. Failure to enter the stage on time will result in an automatic loss. When the participants signed up for the tournament, they were each given a number. Sometime later, the sect leader flew off the stage into his personal seat, which was atop the entire arena, giving him a full view of everything and the presence of a god. Soon, a sect elder acting as the judge entered the stage and announced the beginning of the tournament. There were over 8,000 participants in the tournament, and since there would only be 2 fighters at a time, the tournament was guaranteed to take a long time. Moreover, the numbers called seemed to be random, so none of the participants dared to leave the arena, fearing they might miss their turn. Numbers 99 and 1209, the sect elder called. Not even a second later, 2 disciples jumped from the spectators' area and onto the stage. Once the fighters retrieved their weapons, the sect elder officially started the match. For the first several fights, everyone at the arena was watching with excitement, including the participants. But as time passed and more fights happened, the noises calmed down, and the participants began cultivating. Soon there would only be loud cheers every so often when something amazing happened, or it was a popular disciple's turn to fight. As much as the participants wanted to shut down their senses and cultivate in complete silence, they didn't dare to, as it would also block them from hearing their number being called out. The people doing the trial also realized that they would not only have to fight real disciples from the Immortal Monastery, but there was also a chance they would encounter a spirit warrior as their opponent. Eventually, someone from Yuan's group was called. Number 3333 and 4099. I don't want to be a burden, and even if I might never pick up the sword again, I think it's good to have some experience just in case I need to wield a weapon again in the future, she said. Number 7232 and number 8000. Sometime later, Jiran was called to the stage. Yuan and the others were very confident in Jiran's victory, unless he got extremely unlucky and was given an opponent that was far above his cultivation. 6th level Spirit Warrior. Yuan muttered after seeing Jiran's opponent. 6th level? That's 4 entire levels higher than him. She merely exclaimed. I wouldn't worry too much, Yuan said with a smile. Once the match began, she merely quickly understood why Yuan had said such a thing. Despite being 4 levels below his opponent's cultivation, Jiran was able to dominate his opponent with ease. The Peerless Immortal technique. He's using the Peerless Immortal technique. Not just that, but his understanding of the technique seems to have reached the 2nd level. How can an outer court disciple who came from the bamboo garden have such talents? The audience exclaimed in shock after witnessing Jiran display such a technique. It was not just the disciples who were shocked. Even the sect elders watching were greatly surprised, and many of them began considering accepting Jiran as their disciple. That man. He's the Immortal Monastery's 4th sect leader, huh? The sect leader mumbled with a satisfied smile on his face. Sometime later, in just a few minutes, Jiran secured his victory while leaving his opponent completely speechless. Once the sect elder declared Jiran's victory, something unexpected happened. For the first time since the beginning of the tournament, the sect leader clapped, showing his amusement and acknowledgement. This shocked everyone there, as it was almost impossible to receive the sect leader's approval as an outer court disciple, much less a bamboo disciple. When the sect elders saw this, many of them made up their minds and decided to recruit Jiran once the tournament ended. Thank you, founder. Jiran was incredibly excited to receive the sect leader's approval despite his age and experience. After all, the sect leader was a hero and legendary figure in his eyes. Time continued to pass and eventually, it was Tan Songjian's turn to enter the stage. Her opponent was at the 5th level of Spirit Apprentice and also a fellow bamboo disciple, while Tan Songyun herself was at the 9th level of Spirit Apprentice. The result of the fight was apparent to everyone even before the fight began. A dozen exchanges later, Tan Songyun proved everyone right by defeating her opponent without even breaking a sweat. Then, right after Tan Songjian's match, Yuan heard his number being called. Number 8171 and number 300. Good luck. Not that you need it. She merely chuckled. He'll be back soon. Yuan jumped onto the stage and his cultivation shocked many disciples, even sect elders. Chapter 1853 The 7th Round. Chapter 1853 The 7th Round. Yuan's opponent, a peak spirit apprentice, felt his confidence shatter the moment he realized the overwhelming gap between them, his expression turning deathly pale. Facing an opponent who was an entire realm above him, he immediately understood that this battle was anything but fair. But alas, there was nothing he could do about a lottery system that was completely random and entirely reliant on luck. With a deep sigh, the disciple accepted his fate. However, he didn't forfeit. After all, the sect leader was watching and forfeiting would make him look mentally weak. While the disciple retrieved his spirit grade sword, Yuan retrieved his earth grade sword. The disciple's expression grew darker after seeing this. Not only was there a disparity in their cultivation, but his weapon was also outclassed an entire grade. You may begin the match. The sect elder announced. The moment the match began, Yuan kicked off the ground, launching himself forward like a bullet. In an instant, before his opponent could even react, Yuan's blade was already pressed against the disciple's neck. The cold touch of steel sent a jolt of terror through the disciple's body, causing him to freeze in place, his breath caught in his throat. I forfeit," the disciple quietly muttered. The match ended so quickly that some of the spectators missed it because they were not paying attention or they had to turn away for a second. What? The match ended already? That was the fastest one yet. The disciple got unlucky encountering a monster like that bamboo disciple. Meanwhile, in the sect elder's area, Elder Sun's eyes were as wide as saucers. She couldn't believe what she'd just witnessed. He's already at the peak of spirit warrior? He had just become a cultivator not long ago. Elder Sun cried inwardly. Wow, his cultivation speed is quite ridiculous. I know disciples who have spent twice as much time as he has inside the hunting ground, but they're not even half as fast as him. Elder Jing exclaimed, her desire to have him as her disciple growing even stronger. Even Elder Sun was beginning to consider recruiting Yuan as her disciple. I may not be able to recruit Tian as my disciple, but he's a different story, she thought to herself. However, the fact that he looks exactly like Tian is weird. I don't know if he'll be able to ignore that. When Yuan returned to his seat, those around him stared at him with weird looks on their faces. Some had gazes of admiration, while others were fearful of him. The excitement for the next several matches was almost non-existent after Yuan's match. Since he had just gone on the stage and wouldn't fight again until the next round, Yuan closed his eyes and began to cultivate in silence after sealing his hearing. A few days later, Yuan opened his eyes when Lan Yingying woke him from his seclusion. "It's your turn," she said. "Thank you." The second round of the tournament had begun, and Yuan was the first amongst their group to go first this time. This time his opponent was at the first level of Spirit Warrior. Once the match began, Yuan immediately went on the offensive. The Spirit Warrior was able to see his movements, but reacting to it was a different thing entirely. After barely avoiding Yuan's first strike, the disciple panicked and tripped, falling to the ground, and at the same time his butt touched the cold platform, Yuan's sword reached his neck. His opponents were so weak that he only needed basic sword techniques and raw speed to defeat them. The more the sect leader watched Yuan fight, the stronger his gut feeling about seeing Yuan before got. Sometime later, she merely entered the stage again. Her opponent had the same cultivation as her, so it didn't take long before she merely secured her victory. Ji Ran's opponent was only a spirit apprentice, allowing him to take another easy win. Lan Yingying got unlucky and had to face an opponent who was at the third level of Spirit Warrior. Unsurprisingly, she lost after a few exchanges. I thought I would be able to win a few more, but alas, I only managed to win once before losing, she sighed as she sat back down. Statistically speaking, you're quite lucky when compared to the other bamboo disciples since the majority of them lost their first match, Ji Ran said. That doesn't make it any better, she shook her head. Tan Songyun went several matches later, and her opponent was 3 levels higher than her. Despite the disparity, Tan Songyun managed to defeat her opponent and win. However, it was not an easy victory and she even almost lost. Time passed and the matches continued without any pauses. The sect elder judging the tournament would change every single day, and the audience would change over time. She merely managed to make it to round 5 before losing to an opponent who was 7 levels above her cultivation. Tan Songyun had to leave the tournament after losing in the 6th round. Her opponent was surprisingly at the peak of Spirit Warrior. Due to the massive disparity, Tan Songyun didn't even bother trying to fight and forfeited before the match could even begin. Unlike the true disciples of the Immortal Monastery, Tan Songyun had no problem forfeiting when obviously outmatched, as she was not afraid of losing face in front of the sect leader. Ji Ran and Yuan continued to win their matches without any issues. Eventually, half a month had passed since the tournament began, and it just reached the 7th round. Number 8171 and number 121. Yuan entered the stage after hearing his number being called. His opponent, a handsome young man, entered the stage several seconds after he did. Normally, Yuan would face his opponents with a nonchalant expression. However, this time was different. When Yuan saw his opponent, he immediately frowned, and he could feel his blood heating up from anger. Killing intent. This left Yuan puzzled and he tried to figure out the reason for his anger as he fought Baijan. What happened to the young master? Jiran mumbled to himself. If Lan Yingying and the others were present, they would also be worried. However, they left after they lost their match so they could immediately continue their training. Since they were confident Yuan would win the entire tournament, they had no reason to stay for the whole thing. Time passed slowly. 5 minutes turned to 10, and then it became 15. Half an hour had passed since Yuan and Baijian started their match, marking their match the longest since the start of the tournament, but neither one seemed to be on the verge of defeat. The audience mistook Yuan's seemingly defensive performance as a sign that he was struggling, believing he was at a disadvantage in the fight. Murmurs of speculation rippled through the crowd as they watched, convinced that Baijian was pushing him back. However, Baijian felt something entirely different. Though he couldn't pinpoint the exact reason, a deep sense of unease settled in his chest. There was something off about Yuan, something ominous that sent warning signals through his instincts. As the match reached the hour mark, Yuan's expression suddenly changed drastically. The calm, controlled demeanor he had maintained throughout the fight vanished in an instant, replaced by a look of pure fury. His previously tranquil face twisted with anger, and the killing intent that had momentarily faded came surging back with terrifying intensity. This time it wasn't subtle, it was so overwhelming and palpable that everyone in the audience felt it. A chilling silence fell over the crowd as a heavy, suffocating pressure settled in the air, making it clear that something had shifted within Yuan. Meanwhile, a piece of memory flashed within Yuan's head. Hey, what are you? Baijian began, his voice laced with nervousness as he sensed the drastic shift in Yuan's aura. Before he could even finish his sentence, Yuan suddenly unleashed the Peerless Immortal technique, amplifying his 1,000-mile sword strike to an overwhelming degree. With immense fierceness, Yuan's sword slashed through the air, sending a terrifying arc of spiritual energy hurtling toward Baijian. Baijian reacted just in time, managing to raise his sword to block the incoming strike. However, the sheer overwhelming force behind Yuan's attack was far beyond what he had expected. The impact ripped Baijian's sword from his grasp, sending it flying through the air before the remaining energy of the strike crashed directly into his body, severing it in half. Everything happened so quickly that neither the audience nor the sect elders had time to react. By the time they fully processed what had transpired, it was already too late. Baijian's body lay split in two on the stage, his blood and organs scattered across the arena in a gruesome display. Yuan was taken aback by the sect leader's unexpected outburst, especially since Tian Yang's name came out of his mouth, and it was even accompanied by killing intent. However, despite his shock, Yuan managed to keep a straight face and responded, Tian Yang? Are you talking to me? My name is Xiao Yang though. Bullshit. You may look a little younger, but you're definitely Tian Yang. The sect leader shouted. How else do you explain your mastery of the Peerless Immortal technique? There's no way you'd manage to reach that level in such a short time. You must have known it prior to coming here. After a moment of silence, Yuan said, It's true. I knew about the Peerless Immortal technique before coming here. However, that's only because I was taught it by sect leader Jiran. I am his disciple after all. What? The sect leader's expression suddenly froze. You don't recognize me because I had my mask back then, right? I was the one who asked if I could bring my companions, who would not be participating in the trial, with me. Sure enough, Yuan was wearing a mask before entering the Immortal Gates. However, that mask disappeared alongside his real body, hence why the sect leader didn't recognize him. The sect leader fell silent with a pondering face. Now that I think about it, there's no way he could be Tian Yang. He looks too young and that bastard should have died long ago. Eventually, the sect leader realized that he'd made a mistake. However, he didn't apologize and said, Forget it. Now tell me, why did you kill that disciple? Because he offended me, Yuan said, keeping it vague on purpose. I know you said he offended you in the past. However, you also claimed you'd never met him before. Yuan shook his head and explained, That was actually a lie. That disciple just didn't remember me and I agreed with him to make him lower his guard. The sect leader narrowed his eyes at Yuan. Eventually he said, Whatever. I don't care why you killed him, but you will be punished accordingly for breaking the rules. What kind of punishment? Yuan asked. 10 years in confinement, said the sect leader. Yuan raised an eyebrow and said, You expect me to just accept this? am not spending 10 years in this trial so you can just disqualify me from the trial entirely. Because you have something to do in the outside world? Then you should be happy to learn that time in this world flows differently, much slower than the outside world. Although you have spent over a year in this world, in reality only a little over a month has passed in the outside world. Really? Yuan's eyes widened with surprise after learning this information. What would I gain from making such a lie? I was going to announce this information sooner or later anyway, revealed the sect leader. Anyway, I will give you two choices since you are currently ahead of the pack. 1. You will spend 10 years in confinement, but your time limit to become an inner court disciple will be halted. Or 2. You will spend 2 years in confinement, but that timer will continue to tick even while in confinement, and all points you earn will be reduced by 50% for the next 5 years. Now which do you choose? That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.